All right, all right. I think we can go ahead and start here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. I'm not a professor, but you can call me Nap. And welcome to our first, I guess you can call it Halloween themed stream. As you can see, I've put up some decorations around here. Clearly spooky stuff that I didn't do last minute. Thank you, Case. Glad you love the hat. I love the hat too. Just wanted to have a little, if we're gonna do Halloween stuff, gotta have, a little bit of a Halloween theme. Thank you, damn it, Dale. Terrifying. Yeah, I trying to be scary here. That's what we're all doing today. So, if you couldn't tell by the title, today we are going to be looking at some scary, not necessarily scary. They might actually not be scary. Maybe they'll be funny. Maybe they'll be like interesting or comedic. Who knows? Um, we're going to be reading ghost stories, specifically ghost stories that we find in 100-year-old newspapers. Um, we have on occasion had bats in the library where I work. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Oh God, ooh, that is rough. Yeah, I can imagine because I mean you have to get them out. And our bats, I mean, I know some bats are like protected, so like you can't do anything. They're like trying to get them out, like you have to like lure them. Do you have to like? I'm assuming you call like some sort of like pest control or something like that. Thankfully, I've never had to deal with any like large animals in or like nothing more than like insects in like a museum collection that I've worked with. I have had to deal with carpet beetles. Of course, that's kind of like the classic thing. I feel like that's in like almost every museum. Every museum has to deal with at some point. Because carpet beetles, yeah, are like the most common thing you find. And they can also be very destructive. Um, just eating everything. Regular brown bats had wildlife people come out and rehome. That's good, that you're able to rehome them and everything. Um, but yeah, so like I said, today's our first Halloween stream, and this is probably going to be what most of the streams are for like the rest of the month. Is going to be like stuff like this, reading like stuff from old like newspapers and stuff like that. Not necessarily research. But uh, I also do have planned on not on Halloween day because I can't stream on Halloween day because I'm busy that day. Um, but we are, what day is that? The 29th. So that Wednesday, we're going to be doing special um a special stream where I'm going to be presenting on um my favorite historic house that is also supposedly haunted, and we're going to be looking into seeing how true some of those ghost stories are. Um, I'm not going to say what it is yet. I want it to be a little bit of a surprise. Um, but I will say it is a house that is famous and famous for ghosts. So we'll see how that goes. Uh, Thank you, Damn It Dale. Enjoy your lurk. Thank you for being here. Um, but um, yeah, so that's kind of the plan for the rest of the month. Um, and yeah, I don't think there are any other announcements. Nothing major since we last streamed on Monday. We were playing a little bit of 2 Point Museum. Um, yeah, so you know what? Let's go ahead and let's just jump into it. Let's see. Oh, I will, I will say something that happened literally. So last night, as I was getting all this kind of like set up before I went to bed, um, I looked up. So I do have some newspaper articles already ready. Um, in fact, I'll just go to the page um, right here so that you can see them, where I'll pop up in just a second. All right. So I do have some stories already picked out. What I did was I went on newspapers.com, just searched the word ghost, I decided to do this range just as like a random like starting point, and I just picked a random state. I just picked a random state, and I decided to go with Vermont. No particular reason. Oh well, the only little bit of a reason I did is because I feel like New England, like East Coast in general, especially New England, is gonna have like the most like ghost stories, like that kind of thing, compared to the rest of the country. It's the oldest part of the country, and it's gonna have like the most just kind of like scary stuff. Because I will say this: growing up on the West Coast, you know, um, Halloween was great and everything like that. But moving to the East Coast, you guys do Halloween on the East Coast so much better than on the West Coast. It's so much cooler, like out here, because you have the history, you have the fall colors. Like, it's just so much, like, just better over. Just the atmosphere of it is better overall than it was where I grew up on the West Coast. Um, Also, this is technically not the first time I've done this. I actually did this last year, 1 year ago, when I had, uh, when I simply had 6 followers. And I think maybe like one person showed up throughout like the whole stream, um, where I did this. And something that I discovered that I thought was really interesting was I initially started looking at things that were older, so like 1880 to like 1900 is what I did last time. So like peak like Victorian era kind of, stuff. And a majority of what I found and what some of the ones that we're going to be looking at here are not like reportings of like actual ghosts. It's like fictional stories that were like posted in a newspaper. Um and I'm curious if this is going to be the case here, but something that I noticed was that every fictional ghost story that I read that was from like that late like Victorian era, late 19th century, almost all of them for their ending had like a Scooby-Doo style ending of like, oh, it wasn't actually a ghost, it was actually this other thing. Like almost all of them, there was some sort of logical like explanation for it. And it was consistently that, and it was just a really interesting pattern that I noticed. Because when you think of like the Victorian era, you think of like kind of like more of like the begin like the peak of like like spiritualism and stuff like that. And it's just interesting that like all of those, it's not what you would expect from that time period. You would think that people during that time, you expect them to be more like superstitious and stuff like that, but almost all of the stories had some sort of logical conclusion, like Scooby-Doo style, like taking off the mask, like kind of thing. It was just really interesting. So I'm curious if that's going to be the case here too. But I think let's go ahead and let's find out. Like I said, I have about 10 already picked out here. Some of them are long, some of them are short. I haven't read any of them like far beyond like the title. So I don't know what's in a lot of these. I did have to like make sure that like when I was looking through them like here, there was a problem where like sometimes it would have like ghost in the title, but it was not about like ghosts at all. Like there was one that was like talking about like ghosts as in like old politics in Vermont and using ghosts as like a metaphor for it, which was kind of interesting, but honestly not what we're looking for. Um but yeah, let's go ahead and let's start. Hold on one second. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to start off today with this story here. I figured it's very fitting to start with this one, where we got the ghost of Halloween. And I think this one is a fictional story. just kind of judging by like how it's written right here. So let's go ahead and let's see what goes on with this one. It was the evening of Halloween, and the Greys always had a big party for the children, and there was usually some surprise in store for the guests. Tom planned this one. Is it to be scary? Asked Ellen. It might make you think it was scary, admitted Tom, if you didn't know that it was really all right. Halloween turned out to be a fine, coldish night with a new moon that was just a little yellow on account of the mists. There were long shadows all about the lawn. The games were played in the big kitchen. Apples bobbed in the tub of water, and the boys and girls strove to bite them without getting a ducking. What is this? A ghost jumped the fence as Tom was about to catch it. That is a terrifying image right there. Like, I hope this isn't a spoiler. And it's weird to have this, if it is a spoiler, to have it just in the middle. All right. Now, announced Tom when the sport was the merriest, all will please give their attention. We are all going out on the side piazza, and then, one by one, we will go to a tree in the orchard and ask a ghost there a question. Each person will have one question, and it must be about something that is going to happen to him or to her. They all went out to the piazza and sat on the edge, looking into the moonlit orchard. In a tree not far off, they could see a curious figure sitting. That's the ghost, said Tom, in a matter-of-fact tone. Who wants to be first? It was Grace. In a minute, she came running back, laughing hard. Oh, he is the nicest ghost I ever saw, and he told me, but I mustn't tell. It was a queer-looking ghost. It looked like a full-grown man done up in corn stalks. His legs, which swung from one of the low branches, were thick with stalks, and his body and arms looked as if a whole field of corn had turned into a sort of clumsy human being. Half a pumpkin shell made into a mask was tied in the front of his face. Every time a child came, he would lean over and speak in a deep voice. Finally, when everyone had held an interview, Tom said that 2 prizes were offered, one for the person who caught the ghost, and the other for the person who came furthest from catching it. At a given word, the ghost was to run from the tree, and all were to try their best to seize him. It made a merry game. The ghost dodged and twisted and turned, and finally, just as Tom himself was about to clutch it, it jumped the fence. All went in to say good night now, and Ellen's father came in from his study to speak to the children before they went. Suddenly, one of the boys cried, "I've got him," and caught hold of Ellen's father. There was a piece of pumpkin in his hair. The ghost was a captive. Okay. That was just a cute little story. That wasn't really scary at all. That was just nice. That was just, like that does sound like something I feel like it feels like a classic old, like kids story. Especially with like the costume and everything like that. And it's very clear from the beginning of like, oh, it's not a real ghost. Yeah, it is a pretty good, just a cute little story. Nothing, no harm, no foul. It's like 0 on the scare meter, but like as like a story, give it like a 7 out of 10, just in terms of a story. I do want to read this real quick because I didn't see this before. Origin of Halloween. Nearly everyone celebrates Halloween, but few know its origin. The Druids were the originators. They always, on October 31st, went to their altar fires and put them out, then rekindled fresh ones. Each then took an ember from the altar and went home, put out the fires on their hearths, and with these sacred embers made a fresh one. This new fire was believed to protect them from impending evil as long as it was kept burning. As the Druid faith faded, the heathen festivals lost much of their grandeur. Ugh. Of course, it's heathen. October 31st soon came to be called a night when the fairies and goblins came from their hiding places to dance in the woods. Nowadays, Halloween is supposed to be a time when the future of mankind is revealed through charms, mystic rites, and strange ordeals. To have all signs come true, Halloween parties must be held in strange places: kitchen, barn, or attic. Huh. I I mean, I feel like back then, like anything that was like slightly like pagan was just associated with druids. Even though like druids, I yeah, it's like I feel like druids is just it's like a blanket term that they used back then for like anything that was like remotely pagan or just non-Christian, like pre-Christian. Um, so I wonder how accurate that actually is. Probably not super accurate considering how old this is. This is from 1911. Um, actually, let me Google that real quick. I'm curious. Just Google. Okay, I mean, this is Wikipedia, but it's something. Hold on. Just a quick little side thing. The eve of the Western Christian feast of All Hallows Day. Yeah, I knew that. At the beginning of the time in Christian dedicated to remembering the dead. Okay, one theory holds that many Halloween traditions are influenced by Celtic harvest festivals, particularly the Gaelic festival Samian, which are believed to have pagan roots. Some theories go further and suggest that Samhain, I think, may have been Christianized as All Hallows Day along with its eve by the early church. Other academics say Halloween began independently as a Christian holiday, being the vigil of All Hallows Day. Celebrated in Ireland and Scotland for centuries, Irish and Scottish immigrants took many Halloween customs to North America in the 19th century, and then through American influence, various Halloween customs spread to other countries by the late 20th and early 21st century. Huh. So, I mean, it's Celtic, possibly. Which, again, I think is, like, what they just... Druids are just, like, the stand-in for that. But basically, we don't 100% know, which is honestly true for a lot of these types of, pagan or, like, early, like, holidays. You know, some things we don't 100% know exactly. And some things probably, like, you know, developed, some things might have developed, like, you know, just independently. Like that thing said, it could have been just from like the Christian holiday, or it could have been from pagan origins, or both. Who knows? All right, so that's one story down. Let's move on to our next one. We have this. Tales of Ghosts. This is from October 11th, 1912. Lord Broham's Curious Experience with a Spook, a compact and its sequel. I know it used to be turnips you carved, so it looked like shrunken heads. Huh. I actually have not heard that. I didn't know that was a thing. Interesting. I guess that kind of makes sense. Turnips, I mean... Yeah, because pumpkins are American in origin, I'm pretty sure. Like they're a squash, and most squashes weren't a thing in Europe. They're American. So it would make sense that they would do turnips, before pumpkins became the thing, depending on how far back that tradition goes. All right, so let's see this one. This one might, hold on, okay. The creepy story as it was told in the English Statesman's autobiography. Goethe once saw a specter of himself, a ghost Cuvier saw. Okay, so this might be a real ghost story? Or, let's see. Let's go ahead and figure it out. There was a certain Pisander whose name has been preserved in one of the proverbial sayings of the Greeks because he lived in continual fear of seeing his own ghost. Just that thing happened to the German poet Goethe. Is it Goethe? I'm pretty sure it's Goethe. That's how you pronounce it. One day, when he was out riding in a spot somewhat removed from the usual haunts of men, he saw a horseman approaching him, and as it drew near, he saw that the rider was no less than a person than himself. His other self, though dressed differently. 20 years after he found himself quite without forethought of the matter, in the same place on horseback and dressed just as was the apparition of himself, which he had met there 2 decades before. Wait, hold on. I'm trying to understand. As it drew near, he saw that the rider was no less a person than himself, his other self, that dressed differently 20 years after he found himself quite without forethought of the matter, in the same place on horseback and dressed just as was the apparition of him. So he saw himself. He time traveled. He did some alternate time travel dimension-y thing and ended up in the same place at the same time. It's pronounced Broom? Burrowham? I thought it was Burrowham. God, they do the British thing where it's you have the word and you just don't pronounce any of the middle part. You just pronounce the beginning of the end. And that's how you say it, apparently. It's like places in New England, like Worcester. When I went to England Massachusetts for the first time, and I saw the place Worcester, I called it Worcester because that's how it's spelled. But apparently, you just don't pronounce any of the middle part, and it's Worcester. All right. Lord Brougham, the English statesman, orator, and author, after whom the well-known species of vehicles was named, had a remarkable experience with a spook. He tells the story in his autobiography published in 1871. Okay, so this is the actual story. English isn't a real language. It's 3 languages in a trench coat that hides in the dark, in dark alleys and mugs other languages for loose grammar. Honestly, fair. That is a great personification of English right there. That's good. All right. A most remarkable thing happened to me, he says. So remarkable that I must tell the story from the beginning. After I left the high school in Edinburgh, I went with G, my most intimate friend, to attend the classes in the university. We frequently in our walks discussed and speculated upon man's grave subjects, among others on the immortality of the soul and a future state. This question and the possibility, I will not say of ghosts walking, but of the dead appearing to be living, were subjects of much speculation. And we actually committed the folly of drawing up an agreement written with our blood, Jesus, to the effect that whichever of us died first should appear to the other and thus solve any doubt we had entertained of the life after death. Huh, all right. After we had finished classes at college, G went to India, having got an appointment there in the civil service. He seldom wrote me, and after a lapse of a few years, I had almost forgotten him. Moreover, his family having little connection with Edinburgh, I seldom saw or heard anything of them. So that all the old schoolboy intimacy had died out, and I had nearly forgotten his existence. I had taken, as I have said, a warm bath, and while in it and enjoying the comfort of the heat after the late freezing I had undergone, I turned my head round toward the chair on which I had deposited my clothes as I was about to get out of the bath. On the chair sat G, calmly looking at me. Dang, while in the bath? Show some respect, G. Just looking at your friend while he's naked? How I got out of the bath, I know not, but on recovering my senses, I found myself sprawling on the floor. The apparition, or whatever it was that had taken the likeness of G, had disappeared. It was afterward ascertained that G had died in India on the very day his apparition was seen by Lord Brougham. A very similar incident, very similar is an incident related to by Sir Walter Scott, under date of 1818. A certain Mr. Bullock had been employed by Sir Walter to make improvements at Abbotsford. Mr. Bullock was called to London, and during his absence, the incident narrated in the following letter took place. Scott, writing to a Mr. Terry, says, the night before last, we were awakened by a violent noise like the drawing of new boards along the new part of the house. I fancied something had fallen and thought no more of it. This was at about 2 in the morning. Last night, at the same witching hour, the same noise occurred. Miss S, as you know, is rather tiresome, so I got up with Beardy's broadsword under my arm, sat bolt upright and ready to fight. I guess that must be like it's probably like a reference to something like an old, like maybe like a poem or a story that is lost on the 21st century reader. But nothing was out of order. Neither could I discover what occasioned the disturbance. The strange thing about this is that Bullock died in London on the very day, and as near as could be ascertained, at the very hour that Sir Walter heard the spooks at Abbotsford. In writing later to the same correspondent, he said, "Were you not struck with the fantastical coincidence of our nocturnal disturbance at Abbotsford with the melancholy event that followed? I protest to you that the noise resembled half a dozen men hard at work pulling up boards and furniture, and nothing could be more certain than that nobody was on the premise at the time. These are instances of what may be termed successful ghosts. Successful ghosts. The ghosts that have failed are perhaps entitled to a brief notice. A ghost once undertook to fright the great naturalist Cuvier. This ghost appeared with an ox's head. Cuvier awoke and found the fearful thing glaring and grinning at his bedside. "What do you want?" "To devour you," growled the ghost. "Devour me," quoth the great Frenchman. "Hoofs, horns, granivorous? You can't do it. Clear out." And clear out the discomfited ghost did. So he just told him to get out and he just left? Dang, all right. It's that easy, I guess. You ever see a ghost in your... I mean, for me, so I'm just going to straight out, like, just kind of get this out of the way now. Personally, I don't believe in ghosts. I used to when I was younger, like middle school age, like I was super into ghosts. Like I wanted to be a ghost hunter and like used to watch all the ghost like TV shows like Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi Channel and stuff like that. But as I've gotten older and just kind of learned more about how the world just things and how things in the world work, and learning about things like sleep paralysis and stuff like that, I've kind of realized that like there are in most cases like actual like solutions for like or like logical reasons for like some of these things. Like for example, this screams right here like some sort of like, again, because he just woke up, like some sort of like sleep paralysis thing. Um, yeah. And mercury used as yeah, mercury was all, oh, and also gas. There's actually, I remember reading that right when I was doing like research for this, like for this stream, that the reason why it's believed there were a lot of like, like ghost sightings or like ghost stuff in the Victorian era is because of the introduction of gas lighting in houses, because that often led to a lot of like carbon monoxide poisoning. Um, yeah, exactly, Dale. Yeah, gas lighting. So also, yeah, quick PSA to anybody watching: if you think your house is haunted, the first thing you should do is get your furnace and vents checked, because a lot of the things that we associate with like ghosts, like feelings of paranoia, visual and auditory hallucinations and stuff like that, are also signs of carbon monoxide poisoning. So so please get that checked out if you think your house is haunted first. Um, so yeah, so this one have carbon monoxide detectors for that reason. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so um the bathtub one makes me think that like maybe he fell asleep in the bath and it was him waking up, or I mean, it says that he woke up on the floor. So maybe he slipped and fell and just like didn't remember, and like he had a head injury and that's what he thought he saw. Um this one with the carpenter kind of doesn't make sense. Cuz it's like, does that mean like all the other workers died too? Cuz he talks about hearing like a whole like group of people um like haunting the place. I don't know what. Did they all die? Yeah. Also, silver salt and a few other things that were said to defend against bad spirits or vampires are antimicrobial. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just all kinds of chemicals, It honestly surprises me how long it took for us to figure out that, like, hey, lead is bad. Maybe we shouldn't have lead in, like, everything. And that it took us a very long time to figure that out. But yeah, this one was okay. This one was definitely more spooky than the last one. Well, it was a bunch of stories, actually. Like a bunch of stories in one. In terms of spooks, I'd give it like a 3. Because none of I mean, there was honestly, some of them were kind of funny. Like the one with where like the ghost is like by his bedside and he just tells him to go away. And also asbestos. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all kinds of fun stuff. And now we have microplastics, microplastics microplastics are like our generation's like lead paint, where like in 50 to 100 years from now they're going to be like, why the hell did they put plastic in everything? Like, and they're going to think we're all idiots for using that kind of stuff. But yeah, as a story, this one, it wasn't really like one story, so it's kind of hard to judge it. I'd give it like combined. I'd give it like I give this maybe like a 6. The last one was more fun, I think, and kind of more. It was more charming. And the plastic will still be around. Yes, it will. It'll definitely still be around. All right. Next one. Here we go. Okay, yeah, this one. I saw this title and I had to pick this one. All right. Ghost appeared in daylight. had a disagreeable habit of laughing when approached. That can either be like, this is either going to be like really funny or that's actually like terrifying. Weird stories and real experiences told at gathering in London of International Club for Cycle Research. Ooh, okay. So these are like researchers looking at all this stuff. It was a gathering at the International Club for Cycle Research. The members, who are well known in society and the professions, gathered round the bright little tea tables and the blazing fires in a room overlooking Piccadilly, and told ghost stories, stories of extraordinary happenings, of weird hauntings, and things strange and most unaccountable. Lady Muir Mackenzie related that of a missionary in Mauritius, who was known as Sir Harry Johnston. He had managed to convert one of the native chiefs, and after a time left for Australia. One day there was a knock at the door, and to his surprise, in walked the chief, who begged him to read the communion service and certain prayers. It was not until the chief left that he began to wonder how he could have got there. He wrote to his friends in Mauritius, and they had replied that after he left, the chief went to the bad, was arrested, and was hanged the same day that on which the ghost appeared to him in Australia. He went to the bad. That's a crazy way to phrase it. Dang, and they don't say what he did. All right. Most of the ghosts of which we heard were seen at night, but Miss Irwin described a daylight ghost. Her grandmother, she said, had an old farmhouse in Worcestershire. Near it was the manor house, in which lived Captain Preedy and his sister. Miss Preedy disliked the lady whom her brother had married, and some time after her death, sardonic laughter used to be heard in various parts of the house. Huh. The servants began to complain that someone pulled the clothes off their beds at night, and after a while Miss Preedy herself was seen in broad daylight, dressed as she used to dress in life, with a mob cap and lace round her shoulders. When the ghost approached Mrs. Preedy on the stairs or in the rooms, it had the disagreeable habit of bursting out laughing. Sometimes it would be seen looking out of a bedroom window, and it was in this position that Mrs. Irwin herself saw it. A clergyman was called in to lay the ghost, but his ministrations had no effect. The ghost continued to haunt the old manor house until Mrs. Preedy left. That shows, remarked Miss Scatcherd, who presided over the gathering, that as Mr. Steed has said to me since he passed over, hatred as well as love is a compelling force in psychic phenomena. A haunted house in Bristol was the subject of a story by Mr. Elliot O'Donnell. For many years the house stood empty. Mr. O'Donnell interviewed the family who once lived there, and they told him that one of the phenomena was that a servant with flaming red hair, whom 3 members of the house had seen in the kitchen. A friend visited the house with him one night, but they were disappointed. Nothing was seen. 3 nights later, Mr. O'Donnell went to the house alone with a dog. After waiting for some time, he heard footsteps coming up the stairs of the empty house and saw a big, whitish light. As the footsteps came nearer, he saw first the head of a woman and then the rest of her body. The figure corresponded exactly with that which had been, oh god, I'm assuming it's up here. Oh god, it's not. Where is it? Uh, which had been, oh, it's right here, which had been seen by the former occupants of the house, just an ordinary looking servant with a very red hair. The figure passed him very slowly, went upstairs, and vanished. His dog was very uneasy all the time, and he himself confessed to a feeling of panic. An Indian experience of a headless man was given by Miss Buck. It was race week, she said, in a large military station in the north of India. My father and mother having a great number of guests, it was necessary for my sister and I to share the same room, our beds being placed 2 feet apart. One night, we came home very late from a ball. To my horror, as I lay in bed, not knowing whether my sister was asleep or awake, and being too terrified to speak, I heard a sort of uneven footstep crossing the room, and I was just able to define an awful sort of hunchback figure coming from the bathroom towards our beds. It was like a pair of legs and a great hump, which, arriving at the foot of the beds, came gradually up the narrow opening between them. Mrs. Buck got more and more terrified, but presently the awful figure disappeared, and she was relieved to hear her sister ask if she had seen anything. Her sister had been lying awake and seen it too, but was unable to speak. At breakfast next morning, while relating their experience, they noticed 2 of the servants exchanging glances. Their father wanted to brush the story aside as rubbish, but it soon appeared that the servants knew all about the ghost and had seen it frequently. It was that of a man who had had his head hacked off by an enemy, and his ghost still haunted the house and went about without a head, filling the bath at night and doing other work in which, in life, he had been accustomed. In the smoking room, after the stories had been told, 1 or 2 members remained to find an explanation of this phenomena. One of them recalled a story which left a great impression on F.W.H. Myers. It was that of a citizen of London, well known to his friend Edmund Gurney, who, after reading an author who treats of the power of the human will, determined with the whole force of his being to be present in spirit, and if possible perceptible, to 2 sisters of his acquaintance. They were aged 25 and 11, and lived about 3 miles off. Without mentioning his intentions of trying such an experiment, he decided to appear to them at 1 o'clock in the morning, and at the hour projected his mind toward them with great force. Besides exercising my power of volition very strongly, he said, I put forward an effort I cannot find words to describe. I was conscious of a mysterious influence of some sort permeating my body, and had a distinct impression that I was exercising some force with which I had been hitherto unacquainted, but which now I can at certain times set in motion at will. A day or 2 afterward he called on the 2 sisters, but kept silent about what he had done. They, on their part, had intended to keep silent, too, but their resolution gave way, and they told their friend that at 1 o'clock Monday morning they had seen his phantom. The elder girl was awake, but the younger one was asleep. Upon seeing the apparition, which was in evening dress, the former aroused the latter, who also saw it. The gas was burning low. Well, I think that might explain a little bit of something. And the phantasm was clearer than a material figure would have been. Both sisters were much terrified. The same man appeared once again to the elder sister at the time agreed upon between him and Edmund Gurney. He succeeded upon this occasion also, but the percipient was so shocked that he had to relinquish his experiments. The question then arose that if a living man can thus project an image of himself to a distance, Why should not a departed spirit do the same? This, it is thought, would give a rational explanation of ghosts. Such, indeed, is the explanation given by Myers. Wow, so we got some like astral projection type thing going on here. Interesting. Not super like, I mean, he's basically just admitting that like his friend is like has like powers. It sounds like something that like I know it's like it's so funny like picturing like like a bunch of like very sophisticated like British people like saying this stuff. But there's something about the guy who like astral projected himself. I'm just picturing, I don't know why in my head I was just picturing like a guy like or like a young like that person you knew in school who was like, yeah, no, I totally did it. Like the kid who like you knew in school who would like always lie about like that kind of stuff. Like very Napoleon Dynamite coded. Or if you watch the YouTube channel Smosh, it's very Chosen. They have this character on there called the Chosen, and it's giving that energy. Um the but I will say the story about the laughing the laughing person was like actually pretty scary. Like that's a terrifying image. The fact that like uh it would just burst out like look at you and just burst out laughing. That one was actually genuinely scary. The clairvoyant thing wasn't really that scary. I'd give this like it gets brought down by the clairvoyant thing, but I'd give this like a 4 out of 10 on the scariness. And then some of these stories actually I thought were pretty good. I'd give it a 7. I think it was better than the last compilation that we had, personally. All right. What's interesting though is that all of like the actual ones that are like actual ghosts appear to be like just coming from Europe so far. I mean, we've only got 2, but still. It makes me wonder if like because Europe was like so much older that like maybe at this time they didn't think like America like had enough history to like justify the ghost stories. Who knows? Let me check something real quick. Okay. Um. All right. Let's see what our next one is. Girl talks of ghosts. Wesley Senior says they are very much Wes says they are very much abused. I thought that said amused for a second, but that is not the direction I thought this was going to go. All right. This is from Boston, from March 11th, 1912, 113 years ago. Miss Agnes Rockwell, a fair Wellesley senior, has come to the defense of ghosts. She declares that they are much abused and are really not bad. In an extensive article, A Plea for Ghosts, in the Wesley College News, Miss Rockwell says, a most flagrant instance of mishandling of ghosts in fiction has driven me to take up my pen in their defense. It must have long been apparent to all considerate literatures that of all the faithful servants who wait upon the pleasure of the insatiate novel reader, none is so absurd and mistreated as the ghost. In protest, first, against an assumption that ghosts are common property. This is a fallacy I can hardly condemn too severely. The helpless ghosts are no better than medieval selves or Greek slaves, rather worse, for neither money nor death can buy their freedom. It is, if it is painful to the delicate ghost to have his privileges unduly stressed, it is equally painful to him to have them usurped by freebooters. Yet there have been those so bold and shameless as to rob these innocent beings of their prerogatives and transfer them to pet characters. The finest specimens of these types, and in my opinion, the only authentic ones, flourish in England. Um, all other ghosts are sports. Hello, Techno Will. Yeah, I just saw that. All other ghosts are sports. I don't really know what she means by that. That is that is a weird. And she's talking, so it turns out this article is actually more talking about like ghosts, how they're like portrayed in like literature and stuff. But I get she's basically saying like, like they're, they're what's the word? Like I'm trying to think of the word. Hey pirate, good to see you. Welcome on in. We're just currently reading some ghost stories. In Anglify, I mean, maybe, yeah. Well, then again, most at this time, I mean, like English literature was kind of like the main thing. I feel like American literature, well, 1912, there was a decent amount of American literature that they could have chosen from, but maybe Englishaboo is that's a good way to put it. um, yeah, all other ghosts are sports. I don't really know what she means by that. And it's crazy that you caught that, Techno, like right before I actually read it. Yeah, I think this is more. I thought this was going to be more about like actual ghosts, in the sense that like they are just like like they're misunderstood. That's basically what she's saying, is that ghosts are misunderstood. Uh, did America ever develop culture? Yes, we did. It's called the funnel cake. You're welcome. It's called the funnel cake. Uh, and um, I was about to say hamburgers, but actually, I think hamburgers were invented actually in Germany, in Hamburg. So ignore that one. Um, just basically like, oh, the corn dog. Yeah, cornbread, good stuff like that. Barbecue. We got all that good stuff. So yeah, we got. Don't tell me America doesn't have culture. Yeah, exactly. Deep fry everything. Deep fried everything. What else are you gonna? Yeah, just go to. If you want to see American culture, go to a state fair. Go to a state fair, and you will come back a changed person. All right. But yeah, so this one, honestly, I'm not really gonna rate it because it turns out it wasn't really like an actual ghost story. It was just talking about ghosts in like literature. So a little not what I was expecting with that one. Um, let's see. So according to my Twitch stuff here, we are about to go to like an ad break. Um, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead, um, and I'm gonna go ahead where I'm not gonna read the next one yet. I'm gonna wait for the ads to be over. And I'm gonna use the restroom real quick. And then, but I'll be right back. Um, let me go ahead and switch over to, here we go, our main office here. And I'll go ahead and just put up I don't have a BRB screen yet. I need to make one of those. But I'll be right back right when these ads finish. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be back to reading more ghost stories. Use this opportunity for yourself to get some water, stretch, walk around a little bit. And yeah, right. See you guys in a little bit. In the meantime, we'll just wait for those ads to finish up. All right, and then we'll get back into reading some more stories. I went to the Virginia State Fair, got stung by yellow jackets, and put on 2 pounds due to food. That sounds like, honestly, the perfect state fair experience. That sounds about right. If you got sunburnt, that's like the other, that's like the only other thing you're missing right there, pirate. Yeah, especially the putting on 2 pounds with food. Like that sounds about right. I don't know about the Virginia State Fair. I haven't been to a state fair honestly in like a long time. Since not since I was like a kid. Um, but I want to go back. Like if I've like unfortunately it's not state fair like season anymore. Um, it's kind of like it's like that's pretty much done at this point, unfortunately. Um, Something that I've thought about like would be like a fun like I don't know if anybody's done a video of this. It'd be cool if somebody like did a video uh like it was like if you did I want to do like a thing where it's like you go to every single state fair like one year. I think that would be really cool and like really interesting to like see how like all the state fairs compared, if they're all like just the same thing in like the same place, or just seeing how like each state does their own thing. I think that would be really cool and interesting, but that would cost a lot of money and take a lot of time to do. Uh, Also, a sheriff spoke to me about being Irish for 15 minutes, and I had no clue what he was on about. That's hey, nothing. I forget where it was. Um, I saw like a meme where it was like, who loves being Irish the most, and it said like Americans, like because Americans will like talk about their. It's like Irish and Italian Americans will like brag all the time that they are Irish or Italian. They love talking about their heritage. Um, all right, I think their ads are done here, so let's go ahead and head on over. And I did see your thing, Techno. Rutland Daily Herald, first issue date, December 8th, 1794. Ooh, yeah. Oh, I just realized that was the. I didn't realize that was the newspaper I was reading. I see what you were doing there. I was curious for a second. Uh, my family always wants to go on about our Irish heritage. No, guys, our ancestors were Scottish. Oh yeah, I did the I had kind of a similar thing where like my mom's side of the family, they were like always like, yes, we are German. We are 100% German. We're all German and like all that kind of stuff. And then we did like the 23andMe thing, and it turns out like we did have German, but we also had a lot of like Polish. And also we also made the discovery that like which I feel like happens a lot in America, where I was told that we had Native American ancestry in our lineage, and then I did a 23andMe thing, and absolutely no no Native American. I took it, my dad took it, and my grandfather took it, who was like his side of the family was the one that supposedly had the Native American in us, and we had nothing. None at all. So, it's just a thing I feel like a lot of Americans families like say. Um yeah, exactly. Everybody has a Native American legend. Yeah. I think it's just because they want to make them feel more uh it's like they want to feel like just more like connect. I feel as if they have more of like a connection to America beyond like immigration. Um I've read an article about it like when I was in college, and unfortunately I don't remember a ton, that was talking about like how it's called like the like quote unquote like Indian mother, because like majority of time in these stories it's always like a Native American bride that ends up in them. Um which is kind of seen as more like, I don't know, it was seen as more like maternal. Um oh yes, that's it. Yes, case Cherokee princess. Yes, Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, it's a classic thing that I feel like every American family has. Uh, I had to show my passport and my ID, and all I had was my Irish passport on me. Wow, he was that dedicated. And my family did 23andMe, and we were 100% Irish/English because they could not define it more. I mean, honestly, I feel like that's what happens when people from Europe take it. Like, it's not as interesting. It's definitely, I think, appeals more to like Americans. Like it's like not. It's always seen as like like oh like I wonder what I am, and they're like oh yeah, it's the country that I live in and have lived like my family has lived in for like centuries. Whereas with America, because it is more of like a melting pot, because I took it because like my dad's side of the family, they had been in America for so long that we didn't know 100% what they were. So that's why we did it. That's more of the appeal of it. It appeals more to like Americans in that sense. Um, People around here like to say that they have Cherokee ancestry. Never mind that the Cherokee were never in this state. That's crazy. Yeah, they'll always find something to like latch onto. All right. Let's go ahead and let's get back. Let's go ahead and see what. Let's get back to our ghost stories here and uh, see what we got. All right. Same here. My family mostly been here since before the revolution. Yeah, I have that a little bit on my father's side. I do have an ancestor that goes all the way back to Colonial Williamsburg, and his name is in the church on the plaque in Colonial Williamsburg. It's like a very distant ancestor, but it's still pretty cool to have like an ancestor, like a one that we can directly like go back to, in a historic place like Colonial Williamsburg. Um, we did it to find lost relatives because a lot of my family disappeared due to terrible communications. Uh, back in the day, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because those things, yeah, they are good at like kind of connecting the dots and finding like ancestors and stuff like that, and people, relatives you didn't know you had. Earliest ancestors arrived in 1680s. Wow, that's really cool. Dutch colonists on Manhattan. Ooh, that's really cool. Um, I'm trying to. I think my ancestors, the ones that were in Colonial Williamsburg, were about that time too. I think a little earlier. I think like 1750s is like as far back as we could go in like kind of the Jamestown area. But yeah. All right. We keep we keep getting distracted talking about genealogy, which I do love, and that because we do that a lot on this channel. We do a lot of cool genealogy stuff, but we need to get back to. I want to read some more of these ghost stories and see if we can actually be scared. All right. Our next one here. Ghosts out of a job. What have become of those which haunted European royalty? Dang, they took their jobs. Someone took the ghost jobs. Ghosts are ancestors, technically. I mean, yeah, they are. You are right. They are technically ancestors. Um, all right. London again. London. Most of these ones that I feel like have to do with actual ghosts are mostly from Europe. All right. Now that spirits and spiritualism are occupying such an unusual amount of public attention on both sides of the Atlantic, it would be interesting to know what has become of the ghosts attendant upon royalty. This is a point of connection with the wholesale abdication of crowned needs since the war, uh, which seems to have escaped public notice. Uh, there is no self respecting royal family in Europe which has not. Oh, uh, hold on. Sorry, folks. I do have to. I'll be right back. I'm getting a phone call that I have to answer. Don't go anywhere. I'll be.
That's pretty neat.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that, folks. um, that I had a, I'll just say I had a call from Grandma Nap. Speaking of ancestors, I had a call from Grandma Nap, and because yesterday was her birthday, and I left a message for her yesterday, and she was responding. Um, so I couldn't miss that call. Oh, and Techno Will, thank you so much for the follow. Thank you so much. Welcome to the class. And I can see, yes, you're using getting access to some of our emotes, which I really love. So yeah. All right. Let's head back to this story real quick. Um, all right. Oh, and Aeon, thank you for the lurk. Enjoy lurking here. Thank you for being here. Um, all right. So, where were we? Okay, let's go ahead and read kind of where we were here. There is no self respecting royal family in Europe which has or had not its ghosts or ghosts. The question is, did these apparitions go away with their families, or did they stay on as caretakers of the royal palaces? The White Lady of Potsdam, for instance, the apparition who appears to or something is it like, oh, it's like cut off, foretell death or disaster to the Hohenzollers. There is quite good testimony to the fact that she appeared before the death of the father of the ex-emperor William II, and rumor has it that William himself saw her on that fatal day in July 1914 when he declared war on France. This white lady carries a bunch of keys at her side and is supposed to be the ghost of Bertha von Rosenberg, who came to a violent end in the 16th century. I wait for judgment, she said, on one of the only two occasions on which she has been known to speak, and now indeed she has got it. Still, if she is not yet satisfied, the question is, does her ghost still continue to wander through the halls of Potsdam, or has it taken up its residence with William Hohenzollern and family in Holland? The Russian court was haunted by many a ghost, of which the most famous is the wraith of the great Empress Catherine herself. The story is that with this wraith began its haunting even before Catherine died. The Austrian royal ghost is a green lady. If she had to appear before very tragedy in the if she has had to appear before every tragedy in the Austrian royal family during the past half century, she must have been sadly overworked. Wow, dang. The last actual record of her having been seen was after the death of the unfortunate Prince Rudolph, who committed suicide in company with the Baroness Marie Vetsera. Huh. Dang. I mean, yeah, this is 1920, so that makes sense. Wow. That is okay. So this is, I mean, this is just kind of listing a bunch of like, yeah, what happened to those which haunted European royalty. Huh. I mean, this one, the White Lady, was last seen in like around 1914. which wasn't that long ago, considering this is 1920. So I don't know if maybe necessarily she's like gone. Also, it says that she met a violent end in the 16th century, but we don't know what happened to her. Yeah, not really a much. I feel like there's like so much like other stuff that could be like here that's like missing. So honestly, this one was kind of meh. 2 on the scary scale. And like, actually no, I'll give it a 3 because like the whole like like the white lady was actually kind of interesting. The white lady was kind of interesting compared to the other ones. It was like so brief, just like a small paragraph talking about them. All right, so let's see what our next one is. Oh yeah, this one. I I don't know. I just saw this title and I just thought it was so funny. I don't know where this is going, but I could not like click on this when I saw this title. Female ghost doesn't like modern houses, says Pennsylvanians. So many questions right off the bat with this one. This is really good. I really like it. All right. So from Greensburg, Pennsylvania. This is from August 29th, 1919. Rutland News. All right. Residents of Carbon, a mining village a mile southwest of here, are greatly exercised over the weird flittings about late at night of what is declared to be a ghost clad in a snow white gown. Okay, this sounds more like an actual possible like ghost story. This ghost, it is said, has on 3 different occasions between midnight and 1 o'clock aroused Peter Olsen, a Norwegian miner, who lives alone in a small house with its strange wrappings on his door, more vigorous than those of Poe's Raven. Dang. I understood that reference. Olsen arose promptly on each occasion, and when he opened his front door, the figure of what he believed was a young woman in a white robe stood on his step. What do you want? Come into my house. I would not hurt you, Olsen declares, he told the strange figure. But he failed to get any answer, and when he would attempt to lay hands on it, the ghost would give a shrill cry and disappear. Jesus. Ooh. On 3 succeeding nights, the hobgoblin appeared at the Olsen home. Hobgoblin? Is that what hobgoblins are? Are hobgoblins ghosts? I think I've only heard of them like in a D&D sense. I always thought they were like... I thought they were like related to goblins. Huh. Anyway, appeared at the Olsen home, and 3 times did the snow white figure refuse the Norwegian's invitation to come into his house and to give him an account of its mysterious presence. Frank Pizzo, an Italian neighbor, was also called to his door in response to the woman in white rapping. Frank's experience was similar to those of Olsen. William Myers Carbon, grocer for many years, and a local ghost authority. What makes him the ghost authority? I guess maybe he lives there a long time. Says a nocturnal visitor in the white dress is the ghost of a very pretty young woman captured by the Indians in their flight from eastern Pennsylvania a century and 3/4 ago, with the intention of making her the bride of one of the Indian chief's sons. In trying to make her third and last attempt to escape from her captors, the girl was scalped near where Carbon is built. He believes the ghost is greatly embarrassed by the changes wrought during the last few decades. Okay, hold on. Where does it continue? Where does it continue? Or is that it? Is that it? It was like just getting interesting. Oh, come on. There was What in the world does it say doesn't like modern house? Is it just because okay, just because he believes the ghost is greatly embarrassed by the changes wrought during the last few decades? Well, that could mean anything. Not necessarily that modern. I thought because honestly, when I read this title, I thought it was going to be like the ghost of like an interior designer. And it's going to be like hating the interior. Yeah, it was a good build up, but like failed the landing. Like this was actually getting good. Like yeah, like the shrill cry, this picture touch, maybe a cat spirit. Yeah, just that ghost doesn't like the modern architecture or the modern stuff, I guess. Who knows? uh I want to know what makes William the local ghost authority and where he got this story from. I mean, ghost authority just maybe is like just a fancy way to say like town historian. Also, why when you see somebody when if you see somebody in a white robe like in front of your house, the last thing I would do is call for them to come into my house. I would not hurt you. Like also the fact that he like tries to touch them and like I mean obviously like yeah, I don't know. I would scream too. Local weirdo. Yeah, honestly, probably. I'll give this one in terms of scariness. I'll actually give this one a 5 because like the description of it and like the shrieking and stuff like that was actually getting pretty good. I thought the backstory was actually like kind of interesting and cool. But then just completely butchered the landing and like the title was it was clickbait. This is basically 1919 clickbait right here is what we got. Okay. Um let's go ahead then. Let's go to the next one. Um, all right. Oh, this is also from the Rutland Daily, March 19th, 1912. Leah Rock Rochfort's uh ghost. Once more, it is seen in Dublin suburbs. Century-old mystery of disappearance of Earl Beldevire's niece revived. See, it's another Europe one. Another Europe one. Even back then, the effectiveness of clickbait was strong. Yeah. I love old newspapers because people have always been the way they are today. Oh yeah, exactly. Well, it's like I remember there's a YouTube channel that I watch, um, called Mini Minute Man. He's a like archaeologist and like historian who talks about like really cool like subjects. He's also like a science educator who makes videos kind of like calling out like pseudoscience and like pseudo archaeology. Really cool, really awesome stuff. But and there was one where it was like he was talking about how they were talking about like there's this old newspaper article talking about that there were Egyptian stuff like found in the Grand Canyon and that the Egyptians secretly like made it out like all the way to to the Grand Canyon and they're trying to hide it from you, kind of one of those kind of stories. Um, which make my archaeology degree that I have cry. Um, and he says in that, when referring to that newspaper article that references, and this newspaper article is from like around this time, he says, uh, the uh, that newspapers, yeah, the goal of newspapers was not to sell or not to tell the truth. The goal of newspapers was to sell newspapers, and that is why you see all kinds of crazy stuff in newspapers, honestly, and maybe you can even make that argument for today too. You know, um, side eye, yeah. Uh, just I highly recommend his channel. It's really cool, really interesting videos talking about and just kind of like it makes me happy that there's somebody like a good channel out there that's like calling out all of like the like the aliens built the pyramids BS that I hate so much. Like ancient aliens and all that kind of stuff. Like, anyway, anyway, and with enough with that side topic, back to this. We gotta learn about what happened, what's going on with Leia, or Leela, sorry. Yeah, techno. It's always aliens. Everything's aliens. uh, all right. Uh, the ghost of Leah Rockford, the long vanished niece of the last Earl of Belvedere, whose title lapsed with his death in 1814, is reported to have reappeared at uh, Chapelizod, an ancient suburb of Dublin. Several persons recently have affirmed that they have seen the apparition, and the people in the neighborhood of the great Kilmainham uh, uh, preceptory of the Knights of St. John uh, are much wrought up over it. Chapel Lizard? Is that? I can't tell. I can't tell if that's actually, if you're just making fun of it, Pirate, or if that's actually how you say it, because I know you are Irish. um, that actually, oh, that is actually how it's pronounced. Again, that classic English of just like pronouncing words that either are or aren't there. Chapel Lizard. Lizard. I could see that with like an Irish, maybe with like an Irish accent. All right. According to one alleged eyewitness, the ghost visited one night one night on the site. Wait, hold on. According to one alleged eyewitness, the ghost visited on one night the site of the celebrated castle of Kilmainham, not one vestige of whose walls now remain. The mystery of the disappearance of Leah Rockfort has puzzled the secret police of Great Britain and the continent for more than a century. Secret police? Jeez. Guess they've always been around. By the accounts handed down, she was a beautiful young woman with dark eyes and raven hair, who fell in love with Thady Quinn, a junior officer of the Royal Irish Artillery, said to have been distantly related to the then Viceroy of Ireland. One night at a ball at the summer residence of the Viceroy at the Chapel Lizard, Leah Rockfort and the young officer vanished. For more than 10 years, despite the most minute and systematic search by the detectives, not the slightest trace of the couple was obtained, though even the secret police of Paris, Belgium, and Holland were called into service. Then, one day, so it chronicled, a record was found in the Revolutionary Archives at the French capital indicating that Quinn and the Earl of Belvedere's niece had made their way to Paris, where the officer had become, under the name Rogemont, one of the leaders of the revolution, and that his girl companion abandoned him to marry a French viscount. And she was one of the noblemen's wives who were guillotined in the Reign of Terror. Such is the story. That's crazy. The tragic fate of Leah Rockfort was still unknown in Ireland when, in 1820, an apparition said to be her ghost first appeared at the old mill at the end of the steep bridge spanning the river Liffey. The village, which lay in the rich and wooded valley of the Liffey, overlooked by the high grounds of Phoenix Park on one side and by the ridge of the Palmerstown Hills on the other, was in a state of excitement from the repeated visitations of Leah's ghost. Leela's ghost. What troubled the visitors was that the ghost moved over the river, attended by a column of foot soldiers marching with perfect regularity, high up in the air and headed by an officer on horseback. One night, a spectral guillotine was seen beside the vision of Leela, low over a wood. Then came a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, and the ghost vanished for 40 years. In the latter part of the last century, the ghosts of Quinn and Leela were reported seen in company hovering over the Liffey. One of the stories believed by many is that the ghost of Leela is trying to communicate with human beings in order to reveal the name and whereabouts of a boy born to her and Quinn, who, if he could prove his identity, might have a fighting chance to recover the titles and fortunes of the House of Belvedere. Others surmise that Quinn left no child, but that the niece of the Earl is attempting to communicate as to the offspring of her and the French Viscount, so that the heir may claim large estates in Normandy. Interesting. It's a shame that that's all concrete now, apart from Phoenix Park. Wow, so that's crazy that you actually know roughly where this is and what their places they're referring to. Yeah, back then it was probably all still, farmland and village, and now it's all concrete. Okay. It's interesting that the story... It's interesting how they think... I mean, honestly, they probably just ran away together and then just... Because it was, back then, basically until, like, cameras and, like, DNA became a thing, it was very easy to, like, disappear. Change your name, go somewhere new. And so that's probably what happened. And then, as we've seen in our research streams, it's very common to come across people with like same or similar names. So it's honestly like not that crazy if like there was somebody in France who had like a similar name or a similar, as we've seen many times with my research streams, we come across that constantly. I worked in a hospital located in the Phoenix Park when I was in my 20s. Whoa, that's cool. It's always cool when like you find places that are like stories that you recognize and like places you weren't expecting. I'm not going to say which one, but there was a stream once where we were doing a research stream where the people we were researching were very close to where I used to grow up. And like it was weird seeing places that I recognized. I didn't say anything, obviously, but it was crazy seeing places that I recognized as we were researching stuff. So this one, I like the story. I like the intrigue of like, the ghost is trying to tell them that there's an heir so that they could get the money. I'd give this one like a 7 in terms of like story. Scare factor, the ghosts don't really... It doesn't really say that the ghosts really... Well, okay, the spectral guillotine. The spectral guillotine is crazy. Within like a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder. That's a pretty crazy one. But it's not... I don't know. It sounds more silly. Yeah, I agree, Pirate. Yeah, it's more a romantic story in a way. In terms of scary, I'd give it like a 3. We haven't had anything that's like really like creepy. There were some, when I did this last year, there were some that I found were like genuinely creepy. There was one, oh my god, I just remembered this. It wasn't because it was scary, it was just because it was funny. Just picturing this, that there was a ghost story where a house in like Massachusetts or something like that was like supposedly haunted. And the haunting that would happen is that the ghost like every night would like fall down the stairs in the house. And I was just thinking to myself, God, that has to suck so bad to be that ghost. that every night for like eternity, you're just reliving your most embarrassing moment and then your death of just falling down the stairs. God, I wish I could find that story. I don't remember what year it was from. I'm pretty sure it was from Massachusetts, but it'd be a pain. It'd be impossible to find. But it was just so funny. Of like, God, you hit that guy had like the worst. That's like the worst thing if you're a ghost that you have to come back and just like do over and over again. All right. Our next one, meeting a ghost, from the St. Albans Daily Messenger, February 10th, 1913. Meeting a ghost. Did Tom came back, or did Tom? Oh God, hold on. Did Tom came face to face with it between decks, scared the sailor stiff. Then when he got enough to yell, there was a lively time aboard an old sailing vessel till a mate ended the mystery. Oh, interesting. Maybe this one is going to be like, oh, it's a ghost, but then like it's not going to be a ghost in the end. All right, so let's see. Of course, there is no reason why ghosts should not be found on shipboard as often as elsewhere. As a matter of fact, Jack, who is always superstitious, sees his full share of apparitions. This amusing story, told by the ghost himself, is found in Captain John D. Whidden's Ocean Life in the Old Sailing Days. Whidden, a boy of 13, was making his first voyage. The ship was hardly clear of land when a heavy storm set in. Whidden was feeling wretched and in carrying breakfast to the forecastle upset a pan of hot scouse on the head of Old Tom at the foot of the companionway stairs. Scouse? What is that? Hold on, let me Google that real quick. I'm curious. What is scouse? Everything I'm talking about is saying that it's a language. Okay, scouse food. A type of... okay, here we go. Scouse. Type of stew typically made from meat with potatoes, carrots, and onion. Okay, it's a stew. It's just a basic stew. It is particularly associated with the port of Liverpool. And there you go, Pirate. Yeah, like you just said, that's a nickname for someone from Liverpool. That's okay. That explains it. Look at that. Interesting. So he... okay, hold on. Upset a pan of hot scouse on the head of Old Tom at the foot of the companionway stairs. The cuffing he had for this did not make him feel any better. An hour or two later, when the men were sent aloft, the boy slipped down the booby hatch and was soon fast asleep among some rope, canvas, and oakum that were piled against the forward bulkhead next the forecastle. When he awoke, it was dark, but light streaming through some auger holes in the bulkhead, and the sound of voices brought him to his senses. He was surprised to hear the crew talking about him as if he were dead, and discussing the manner in which he had been swept overboard. He heard Old Tom say, "Well, I'm sorry I hit him, but the cub scalt ever spear a hair out my head. Wait, what? Well, I'm sorry I hit him, but the cub scalt every spear of hair out my head." So he's scared. Okay, I think he's saying that he scared him. Okay. He had another long sleep. When he awoke, he heard the crew washing down decks and realized that he was perfectly well and very hungry. He found a barrel of apples in the lower hold, filled his pocket and shirt bosom, climbed back into his nest, ate apples, and went to sleep again. Oh, burned his hair. Oh, that's right, because of the hot... okay. That's right. That's what it is, because of the hot thing. Yeah, okay. Uh, he had another long sleep when he. Okay, no, yeah. The next day, old Tom was sent below to cut a piece of rope from the coils among which Whiddon was hiding. While he was sawing at the rope, the boy, disturbed by the noise, peeped out of the coil of hawser in which he lay and met Tom's glance. With whitened face and bulging eyes, says Mr. Whiddon, he gazed at me a moment, then dropping rope and knife and emitting a series of blood-curdling yells, he dashed for the booby hatch and disappeared on deck. Everyone was aroused. I hope not. I heard the second mate ask, "What broke loose with you?" Uh, and all old Tom could ejaculate was, "I've seen him. I've seen him." I'm not gonna make a joke there. Not gonna make a joke there. Seen who? Yelled Mr. Fabians. Oh, the boy's ghost. The boy's ghost. Old Tom was nearly frightened out of his wits. Mr. Fabians said, the captain, "Get a lantern, take that fellow below, and see what scared him." So Mr. Fabians descended the ladder with half the crew at his back, and old Tom bringing up the rear. As they came forward, the mate called out, "Where's your ghost? I don't see any ghost." Until now, I had lain quiet, but feeling that I was discovered, I rose up to step out of the coil. Tom gave another yell and broke for the hatch ladder, followed by half the men. Mr. Fabians came up, reached over, lifted me out by the collar, and marched me on deck, where I was at once surrounded by officers and crew. Captain King stepped forward and said, "Well, boy, where have you been for the last 48 hours?" "Between decks, sir," I sheepishly answered. "What have you been doing between decks?" "Sleeping, sir." "What? Sleeping 2 days and nights?" "Not all the time, sir," I replied. "Had anything to eat?" Apples," I ventured. Where did you get the apples?" "Out of the hold, sir. I got the head out of the barrel." "Oh, you did? Do you know you've been uh, broaching cargo, and then think the farce had gone far enough, for all hands were on the broad grin," he said sternly. "Now go forward, boy, and if you cut any more capers like that, you'll get a rope's ending you'll remember all your life." Dang. Then to Mr. Fabins he added, keep him up in his day watch below for a week, and give him plenty of work." That ended his lecture, and I was glad it was over and that I had escaped so easily. Going forward with the men, I was pleased to see they bore me no ill feeling, not even Tom, although he might have been excused if he had done so. uh, hey, Al, good to see you. Good to see you here. I know it's not the point, but this use of quote marks is driving me insane. Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, well, because at the beginning, it's like, it says this is from, where is it? It says, like, this is a quote, this is from a book. Yeah, but it's good to see you, man. Hold on. I want to give a quick shout out to Al here, real quick. I haven't done this in a while. Hold on. Please work. There you go. Please go ahead, if you can, check out Al there. He's actually, unlike me, he is actually a former professor, um, where he now does streams, really awesome, like calligraphy streams, and just talks about and other art stream painting, minifigure painting streams, and the whole time talking about really cool subjects relating to like history and sociology. Just highly recommend him if you want just a cool, just like chill time. Definitely recommend. Um, he did get knocked over, or he did get knocked out for a considerable. He did, yeah. I mean, 2 days basically down there just chilling, and he was 13. That's a very, I feel like, 13-year-old thing to do. Of course, Al. Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Okay, so that was this one. This one again, it's called Meeting a Ghost, but it's not really a ghost story necessarily with this one. Um, this one was more like, oh God, what? This one was more like it was just a regular story. It just technically they thought he was a ghost, but he wasn't a ghost. Oh, and I don't know if you were here earlier, Al, but because you have like a sociology background, I don't know if maybe you like might think this is interesting. I did a stream like this last year, um, where I did this where I read like ghost stories from old newspapers back when I had like 6 followers, and I mostly read stories from like the 1880s to like 1890s and like that range. And most of the stories that I came across, I was trying to find like actual like kind of like stories like of ghosts, like people seeing ghosts, like actual like people reporting about it. But instead, I got a lot of like fictional stories. And something that I noticed um, was that almost every story from like the Victorian era, from like that range, ended like Scooby Doo style, where the ghost actually wasn't a ghost. It was something logical. Like it was like, like literally like man in a mask, like kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. I wasn't expecting that either. I was like, I was because you think of that time as like kind of like the height of like, like spiritualism and like stuff like that. And you think that people back then were more superstitious. But almost every story that I read that was like a fictional story from that time involving a ghost or a haunting ended with like some sort of like logical like thing where it's like, oh, it wasn't a ghost, like I said, Scooby Doo style. So yeah, that was just something that I thought was really interesting. These ones are that we've been looking at are a little bit later, and so far, so I mean, this one obviously was an example of like one where it's like, okay, it wasn't a ghost, it was just something else. Um, yeah, my gut would be that it reflects a faith in science. They're like, yeah, and like, yeah, this is a time when of spiritualism and theosophy and such, and so it would be a site of contention. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. It's just that's something I feel like that'd be really cool to like do like a research, someone to like research and like figure out what if they can like find like a pattern like that. Sight, not sight. Hey, I didn't even notice, man. I've been reading for like the last 2 hours. I guess the fact that newspapers are mostly publishing Scooby-Doo stories would reflect the desires of newspaper publishers slash editors. Yeah, and also not only that, but also the authors themselves. Like, because a lot of these like stories that you see like in these newspapers are like written by like specifically like like authors. Like think like Edgar Allan Poe kind of style, where like he would. I'm pretty sure we used to like post in like magazines and newspapers. It's kind of like that. Um, we are publishing such writing to knock down those superstitious rubes and show how sophisticated we are. Maybe, yeah. Something along those lines. It's really cool and really interesting. Yeah. It might just reflect source of survivorship bias. Yeah, that is true too. Yeah, yep, preservation bias. Exactly. Yes, I am very much aware of that. Yes, definitely. A lot of them seem EU based, where readers could not easily check facts with as well. Yes, Pirate also brings up another point where the ones that are actual ghost stories, for the most part that we've seen so far, have been from Europe, where they're just retelling European stories in these newspapers. And again, yeah, you couldn't really fact check them because it was so far away. But also, I think it also reflects that this idea of like kind of the old world, that because they have so much more like, history and like stories and stuff like that, that you're more likely to get ghosts out of that than something, in America. Yeah. Yeah, old versus new world, exactly. Um, all right. So let's see. Oh, this one. All right, so our next one here, this is actually not a ghost story at all. I just think it's really cool because I love this effect. How ghosts are made. This is an illusion that I believe I don't know if they call it here. We'll read it in just a second, but I believe it's called the Pepperbox Ghost. And this is talking about how they do it for like stage shows and stuff like that. I just want to. I know it's not an actual ghost story, but I just saw this like title with this illustration, and I really want to talk about it because I think like this type of stuff is really cool. So, how ghosts are made? Oh, and it's from this from this section, new and interesting facts from science and life. So again, that explains why it's talking about it here. By means of rather unique stage illusion, a ghost can be made to appear and fight a duel. The plot of one such a play deals with two men who are twins. In a quarrel, one of them is killed by his brother, who disposes of the body in the dead of night. This is shown in the first act. The war begins, and the living brother is sent to the front. Several months pass, and the soldier returns from the trenches. He arrives at his home at midnight and is about to enter the house when the ghost of his dead brother appears in the doorway. He calls but receives no reply. Swords are drawn, a duel is fought, and the ghost kills his adversary and vanishes. Dang, the ghost actually wins. During the entire action of the duel, the sword of the living brother passes through the figure of the ghost with absolutely no effect. The ghost appears to be only a thin vapor, while the body of the living brother is clearly seen through the ghost's body. How this illusion is affected, Harry Marseille describes. How this illusion is affected, Harry Marseille describes as the following in Popular Science Monthly. The duel is brought on stage in a rather dim blue light so as to carry out the effect of it being late at night. Part of the stage or a trap at the curtain line is removed, this not being perceptible to the audience. Beneath this stage is placed a stereopticon machine, as shown in the illustration. The wall in back of the figure is draped in black cloth. The character beneath the stage dresses in white, duplicating the costume worn in the first part of the play by the dead brother. A sheet of plate glass is placed at an angle leading from the opening in the stage to the borders overhead, containing to the center of the stage where the action takes place. At rehearsal, the spaces on the stage are marked. The space beneath the stage is also marked to correspond with that on the stage. All the cues are taken from the music played during the duel. When his cue is given, the brother in white steps beneath the open stage. The light is then thrown on him from the stereopticon, his image appearing reflected in the glass. Every movement that is made by the performer beneath the stage is followed by the performer on the stage. This is, of course, rehearsed thoroughly beforehand, otherwise there would be no realism to the duel. When the lights in the house are extinguished, it is impossible to distinguish the glass on the stage. With a little study of the illustration, the idea may be constructed in miniature, and many interesting experiments can be derived by the use of mannequins or dolls. Never seen that spelling of the word mannequins before. That's really interesting. I really love this effect. I do also see we are about to head into an ad in a second. So I'm not gonna start the next one until we get till the ads finish. But yeah, no, yeah, for the time this seems very high tech. And they don't mention it here, but I believe this illusion is called the Pepperbox Ghost. And I know that because I am a big, on top of like loving like history, of like, with genealogy and like American history and stuff like that. I also have an obsession with theme park history. Don't ask, like, I don't know. I don't know. I just think the history of like rides and stuff like that and like amusements is really cool and interesting. And they use this exact effect, the Pepperbox Ghost, they use this exact effect in the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, in Disney World, for like the ghosts that you see when you in like the ballroom and stuff like that, in the ballroom scene. Um, they do this exact effect. And when you go by the ballroom, you're kind of like above it, looking down, and you don't notice it because of how it's lit. But there is a like um, huge, like large plate of glass in front of the in front of the like balcony. You don't notice it, like because it's very like you just see right through it and it's not noticeable. It's a giant piece of glass, probably about like God, the size of like as high like two floors tall, because you need that big of a piece of glass in order for this effect to work. And how big the opening is where you can look in. And but hold on, wait, let me see if I can find a photo of it. Hold on. Hold on. Haunted mansion. Uh, okay, hold on. They have a picture. Where is? Oh, do they not have? I mean, I guess it's hard to get a photo of it. Um, yeah, I don't see. Is this it? Oh yeah, I can't find a good photo of it, but basically, there's a if you watch that, if you go to Disneyland and go on the Haunted Mansion and you look at the like ballroom scene right near the end of it, there is a uh you'll notice that there's what looks like a spider web, and what that spider web actually is uh, a bullet like glass like or a bullet crack from a BB gun that way like decades ago a kid snuck a BB gun into Disneyland and shot the glass and caused it to crack. The problem though is that because that piece of glass is one thing and it's so huge, you can't replace it. You have to like leave it there until like or you can't like unless you take apart the whole ride, you can't replace that piece of glass. So what Imagineers did is that they painted around the cracks in the glass to look like a spider web. So that's why there's like a it looks like there's like a floating spider web in like that kind of part of the mansion. That's what that is. I think that's a thing with the pepper box. Because they need that glass in order for the illusion to work, and they can't replace it. Kind of like how you see here, um, with the how they have this giant piece of glass. But this is really impressive, like considering the fact that like they had to rehearse it because he can't the guy down here can't see what's going on up here, so they just gotta hope that like everybody is hitting their mark like perfectly, timing wise and everything. Seeing this in person in like 1919 would honestly be like super impressive. Honestly, it'd probably be even impressive today by today's standards. Um, let's see. When you were in the UK, did you go see Dreamland in Margate as its original wooden roller coaster from 1920s? Not that far. No, I didn't. No, we didn't. I was with my parents, and my parents, like, they're kind of older, so theme parks and stuff like that weren't on our weren't on our itinerary. Um, but I did. I would love to go to like, um, what is it, Alton Towers? That's also near London. I don't know how old that park is compared to the other ones, but oh, fun fact, little fun fact about me. I have ridden the three oldest roller coasters in the world, and I rode all three of those roller coasters in the span of less than a year. One of them is in Pennsylvania. The oldest one is in Pennsylvania from like 1902 or something like that, called Beat the Dips. The other one uh is in is in Melbourne, Australia, at a park there, in like a boardwalk park. And then the other one is in Tivoli Gardens. Number three, I think, is in Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. Um, I rode, yeah, all three of those in like less than a year. Margate is the fourth. Ah, dang it! I could have had all four. Oh well. But that's something. Theme park history is something that like I don't know what it is about it. I just really love it and think it's really interesting. Um, all right. The ads are done. So let's go ahead then and move on to next um our next reading here. Let's see what this one is. The Ghost of the Roundhouse. This one's from this is I think our oldest one so far, 1910. Um all right, if we got any train people here, this story's for you. All right, The Ghost of the Roundhouse. And unfortunately this one wasn't really copied well when they microfilmed it. I'll try to read it best I can. All right. The conductor and engineer of a train may not even be uh, acquaintances, and yet all goes well. The conductor may take out 3 or 4 different engineers in a week, and yet no trouble arises. It is if different when you come to the cab. Uh, the engineer must have his own foreman or fireman. It's a little hard to tell. For 3 years, engineer Stimpson and fireman Davis had occupied a cab together on the run of the Mountain Division. At Butler, the engineer had a family and house, and the fireman boarded with him. They were not related in any way, and yet the two looked so much alike that railroad men nicknamed them the twins. In every two men thrown together, one is the stronger. In this case, it was the engineer. His oh god, this one's rough to read. His intuitively this or he intuitively led the way in all things, and his firemen followed. Brothers could not have been greater chums. Davis might have had an engine in front of a freight train after a couple of years, as he had thoroughly mastered the mechanism of the steam motor, or steam monster, but he would not take it. He preferred the subordinate position for 2 reasons. First, it kept him beside his friend, and second, Simpson had whispered to him one day, "Jim, don't try it. You haven't got the nerve. If a pinch came, if a pinch came, you'd lose your head and bring about some awful disaster. I'm not saying that you wouldn't stand up to your work in a row with any man, but keep clear of the throttle. I've watched you, and I tell you that a dark night, a heavy train, and a downgrade makes you tremble like a girl, while I poke my head out the window and whistle defiance to danger." That's it. I can't get over being scared," replied Jim. When it's 35 an hour and a moonlit night, I can whistle too, but the darkness and the speed to make up lost time take it all out of me. When we were 6 minutes behind in making the siding of Grand Bluff the other night, and found the express becoming down upon us, I prayed to God and jumped the cab. You hadn't said a word to me about it, and I'm hoping you never will. It was the fear, Tom, such fear as I never have outside the cab, and the fear that I never can control. Huh. Keep me on with you. I want no engine for myself. Tom and Jim had been paired parde? Okay. For nearly 4 years, when there came an accident that killed the engineer and so injured the fireman that he lost an arm. Oh, geez. The engineer was buried and forgotten by all but a few. Oh, that's harsh. And the cripple was given a place in the railroad roundhouse as night watchman. He had held the place only a single month when strange reports began to be circulated. He had seen the ghost of his dead engineer in the cab of his old engine as she stood over the cinder pit. He saw again and again and whispered the news with white lips, and then he was called to the office of the master mechanic, and the official asked him in a blunt, unfeeling way, "Jim, do you think I put you down in the roundhouse to make a fool of yourself?" "No, sir." "Then don't see Tom Simpson's ghost again. If you do, I shall think you have taken to drink." Don't do it again. Don't see that ghost again." And nothing but water ever passes my lips. But this ghost business is all nonsense. I am surprised that a sensible man like you could tell such a yarn. "Mr. White," said Jim, as he moved a step nearer and dropped his voice to a whisper, "the ghost comes 2 or 3 times a week and sits in the cab of old 990 and looks at me, and that's God's truth. But from now on, I'll say nothing about it. Why shouldn't it come? Tom was the best friend a man ever had." I mean, yeah, if he's not doing anything and he's just chilling, why not, why not chill with him too? It was a month after his interview with his boss, that the ghost came earlier than usual one night. It was a night of darkness and storm, a night to try the nerves of every engineer due to go out or come in. The watchman had gone his rounds, and old 990 was hissing over the cinder pit after a long run when the ghost appeared in the cab and said, "Jim, it's a bad night outside." "It is that, Tom," was the reply. "I told you once that I doubted your nerve. Perhaps I was wrong. No, pard, you hit the truth." "I wouldn't do you wrong for the world, Jim. I want to see. God, this is badly copied. I want. Is it I want? I want to see you at the throttle, and something on such a night as this. That will test your nerve. It may be that the accident has made a change. Take me out and see." And why something, the watchman of himself, the old feeling has gone, and perhaps it won't come back. If if something don't, I could run an engine with the arm that is left me. Uh, tra- Something, Tom. I'll try it. He climbed into the cab and managed to shovel uh, enough coal into the firebox to run the steam up again. Then he turned the table and threw open something the engine on the main track. It was a howling night, or he would have been something and stopped. As it was, he turned the switch back, climbed into the cab, and opened the something and sped away. 10 miles down the road, with the 990 going at a speed of a mile a minute. I think that's what that says, mile a minute. They're going like 60 miles an hour. And the one-armed man in the cab shouting for joy because the fright had left him forever. There was a wait, hold on. 10 miles down the road with the 99 going at a speed of a mile a minute and the one-armed man in the cab shouting for joy because the fright had left him forever. There was a head-on collision with a freight train and 3 men were killed. So there was a ghost in the roundhouse. Something the master mechanic as he looked up and down the mangled form of the dead watchman when it was brought home. Yes, there was a ghost there, but it was his own and led him to his death. Oh, I like that one. That's a good one. You know what's funny? I was as soon as like the ghost like showed up and was like talking to him about him getting like to tell him to like get in the train. I I was thinking to myself like, oh, he's gonna like kill like he's gonna die, like that's where this is heading. So I did kind of call it, and if it wasn't so hard to read, I think this one would be my favorite. I really like this one, and this one doesn't have like a lot. It's like this one, it actually was a ghost. This one actually was a ghost. Compared to a lot of the other ones you read that weren't ghosts. Yeah, I wish this one was easy to read though, because that would have made it a lot better. I think this might be like story wise. I think this is like an 8 out of 10 or a 9, almost like or an 8.5. I'll give this an 8.5. I think this is my favorite, like story wise, and actually even like creepy wise, especially that ending right there. Yes, there was a ghost there, but it was his own and led him to his death. That's a good line right there. I like that. All right. So this is actually the last story that I had pre-chosen. Um, and what I already had like ready. Um, so I do still have all of this, this like list still. I mean, there's thousands of like, because when you just search the word ghost, you get tons of stuff. And for especially for like a 10-year span, even just in a tiny state like Vermont. That's where all these are from, by the way. If you missed the beginning of the stream, these are all specifically. I just picked a random state, and decided to go with Vermont, and go with that one. But I want to read. I did catch this one right when we were going through them. It looks like it's about ghost photography, which I think is really interesting. So those who are looking for novelty in photography may find it interesting to take a photograph of a ghost. Of course, it will be a fake ghost. Get a friend to pose as the ghost and expose your negative, allowing 1/3 of the proper time. Then let the ghost leave the room and expose the negative for the remaining 2/3 of the proper exposure. Of course, the camera must not be moved, and the ghost must be draped in white. They're basically telling you like how to make a fake like ghost photo, which these were actually pretty popular at the time. There's like all kinds of photos like this, like from this era and like earlier. And I think I'm trying to think. There, and I think this is a little different because they would also sometimes do this with like they would mix photos of like dead relatives, like people who had died, and it was sort of seen as like kind of like a mourning photo kind of thing, where they would put like an already existing photo of like the deceased person, and like put them with photos of like those people who were still family members who were still living. Um, yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of like most of people I feel like at the time with this type of photography knew it was fake, but I think nowadays it's kind of seen as like people try to use it as like evidence for ghosts if for in like a modern setting. compared to how it used to be. Ooh, that would be a cool. That would be a cool stream. Maybe for next year Halloween. Go through like ghost photography and like ghost photographs from this like era. That could be interesting. Okay, I got to make a mental note of that and make sure that I remember that for the next year. All right, so let's see. Uh okay, here we go. Let's try cuz I'm looking for ones that have like ghost in like the title. Let's try this one. This is from 1913. Okay, so this one is a like a fictional story. But let's see how it goes. All kinds of ghosts. Polly Andrews discovered a daylight species. Ooh, wow, they're categorizing their ghosts too. All right. Let's go ahead and let's read this one. Sheriff Bob Andrews was climbing into his buggy to drive to town when his daughter, Jolly, came out of the house to call to him. "Oh, Dad, I'm going over to the Ricketts place today to get wild plums." "Lots of them there," he replied. "But what about the ghosts?" They never show up by daylight, you know." "Well, don't flirt with them if they do." The old Ricketts place was a mile down the highway. It was a small farming and a rambling old house that had been abandoned for years. The land had grown up to weeds and briars and tangle, and the house was doorless and windowless, and tenanted by all kinds of ghosts, from that of Henry Ward Beecher to that of a murdered pack peddler. When the boys visited the place to snook around, they went in gangs, and the men who drove past after dark made their horses step a little faster at this spot. Everybody laughed about the ghosts of the Ricketts house, but nobody made a hunt for them. Polly Andrews had been visiting the place at intervals for the last 5 years. There were artichokes, apples, plums, and berries to be found there in season, and a healthy girl has the same appetite for those things as a boy. She has never peered into the front door, but that was the limit. No use in tempting the ghosts to spring out and do murder. The wild plum season had come again, and Polly would defy several ghosts for all the fruit she could eat. Yes, there were plenty of wild plums, as her father had said, and she sat down under a tree to gobble. From where she sat, the girl could see only one end of the house. There were 4 window openings in view, and she had glanced at them several times and wondered what the interior of the house was like. When the face of a young man suddenly appeared at one of the openings on the second floor. It showed for only 3 seconds, but that was long enough to satisfy the girl that she was looking at a human being, a young man whose face might have been interesting, but for the look of fear on it. "That chap is hiding," whispered the girl to herself, and she felt more curiosity than fear. Bob Andrews had been sheriff of Boone County, term after term, and his wife and daughter had always been more or less interested in his cases. "Yes," resumed the girl, "if he were not a fugitive, he would not be here. Hasn't the look of a horse thief, and he is a stranger in this locality. May have been hiding here for 3 or 4 days, but I haven't heard that Dad is after anyone just now. He is probably armed. Wonder what Dad would do if he were here." For 5 long minutes she kept her eyes on the window, hoping the man would show his face again, and when she sprang up with the words, "Why, I know what Dad would do. He'd go in there and pull the fellow out and find out all about him. I'll do the same." God, it's the same. Some things never change. It's like in the horror movies where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to go check out the creepy noise," or like the thing, that's like clearly going to murder me. Curiosity killed the cat. It's been around for even before horror movies were really a thing. 1913. People still going in and getting themselves killed. That's my theory as of this. Or it's a ghost and like maybe it'll just like scare her. Without giving herself time to argue, she walked straight up to the house and halfway around it to the porch and looked in at the doors. A rotting and dismantled stairway led up from a hallway with little heaps of rubbish here and there, desolation on every hand. It was a ghostly place, even at midday. Come down here, sir. The girl stepped into the hall and called to whomever might be above. No reply, no movement. Then I shall come up. With a oh God, with a chilling at her heart and every nerve tingling, Polly softly mounted the shaky old stairs. There was fear at every step, but she forced herself to go upwards. 4 bedrooms opened off the hall, and no doors to any of them. The girl looked into 3 of them and then shivered. The man must be hiding in the 4th. She hesitated only a second and then advanced. There was no challenge. Sitting on the floor in a corner was the fugitive. His knees were drawn up and his elbows rested on them, and his face was hidden with in his hands. He knew that the girl had come up uh, and was looking at him, but he kept his position until she rather impatiently demanded, "Well, have you a name and a tongue?" If they have come to arrest me," he replied, looking up. "Mr. Man, get to your feet. That's better. Now get a grip on yourself. Why are you cowering here?" "I have been made a victim of a base plot," he answered. "I have been hiding here for 2 days." "I have read of base plots in novels, but never encountered one. They don't seem to pick out a hero to base plot against, in this case. I don't know what a base plot is. Huh. The young man was impressed by her sarcasm. He blushed and straightened up, and after swallowing hard, he replied, "I do not claim to be a hero, but I am not a liar. For 3 years I have been employed in the First National Bank at Avenue. Yes, and money has been taken. A package of $5,000 was missing. I had no more to do with the taking of it than you did. But you skipped out and left the world to believe you a thief. Yes, fool that I am, it came upon me so suddenly that I was all confusion. The cashier came to me and charged me with the theft and put $100 in my hands and advised me to flee at once to escape arrest. He said prison awaited me if I stayed. I only waited to put on my hat and coat. Chump, scorned Polly. But if I had stayed, uh, but if I had stayed, that package would have been found somewhere as having been mislaid. Was there any particular reason for the cashier wanting to drive you out? I can't think of any. Were you both courting the same young lady? Why. Oh, you innocent lamb, laughed the girl. It's no wonder the gold brick men, can afford their steam yachts. How that cashier must chuckle. Do you think? No, I don't think. I know. Your name is what? Porter Phelps. And I am Polly Andrews, daughter of the sheriff of this county. Come out under the plum trees. When they were outdoors and seated, she continued, Mr. Porter Phelps, you appear to lack sand and to be easily rattled and to need a guardian. You have told me a straight story, have you? I have. No evasions? None whatsoever. Then you are coming with me and tell Dad all about it. Dad's fine as silk on a trail, and they say I know a thing or two. I guess we can straighten this matter out all right. But your father, protested the fugitive, he'll have a few words to say along the line I have, and then turn to and help you out. Polly was a prophet. To a layman, the young man's story would have been pronounced too flimsy or for belief. But Sheriff Andrews had seen just as queer cases in his time. He listened quietly, thought for a while, and then said, "If you and the cashier were both after the same girl, he would have a motive in wanting to drive you away in disgrace. I'll go over to Avenue and see what I can pick up." 2 days later, he returned. 2 days later, Jesus. He returned to say, no one but the cashier had heard that any money was missing, and it did not take me long to convince him that even he had not heard of it. You can go back and take your place again. A year later, just after Mr. Phelps had left the sheriff's house one evening, the father remarked to the daughter, I thought he was in love with a girl in Avenue. Uh, so did he for a while. Uh, did she jilt him? No, I arrested him. Huh. Jilt. What is that? Hold on. What does jilt mean? Oh, suddenly reject or abandon a lover. Okay. Okay. Huh. Okay, I mean that wasn't really a ghost story. Again, it's another example of like a ghost story. Like not it says ghost in the thing. All kinds of ghosts, but it's not actually a ghost. It's just a guy hiding because he thinks he's in trouble. Also crazy that she went inside. I will admit, the initial description of him like sitting in the room with like his on like his elbows on his knees and his hand covering his face, that actually did like creep me out for a second, like picturing that in my head. But like other than that, it was not really scary. It was more kind of like a fun, silly story. I'd give it like a, in terms of just like the story itself. Um, I mean, she's crazy to like barge in and like go and get, even if it's not a ghost, like to go and like technically try to arrest somebody. Um, I'd give the story. I'd give it a 7. It was fun. You know, it was a fun story, but nothing, you know, nothing crazy. All right. Let's see, what else do we got here? Uh, what's this one? No more old go. Oh, this is wait, is this the wait, what is hold on. No more good old ghosts. Modern substitute, it must be admitted, is more or less flabby and unsatisfactory. This is another thing talking about, I guess, like ghosts and like literature. Like, yeah, how long is it since you shivered at a ghost story? You have read scores of them in the last few years, stories of seances and trances, of cross messages and spirits trying to break through. But did a single one have that hair raising, marrow chilling quality we are justified in demanding from a real ghost story? What is the matter with our modern spirits, anyway? In a day when the world has gone mad on the subject of efficiency, why do we find our ghosts so utterly incompetent, so unequal to their jobs? Their great trouble is their lack of definite purpose. There is no reason whatever for their being, and consequently, they are insipid, uh, purely, puerile, uninteresting things. They don't even call themselves ghosts. They are spirits, a much flabbier term, and the same general debility runs through their entire makeup. They have no wills of their own. They wait respectfully till they are summoned by the very mortals they ought to terrify. They answer like bell toys or bellboys to the call of such silly devices as Ouija boards. Can you imagine a Shakespearean ghost waiting to be summoned? Those were specters with minds of their own. They appeared when it pleased them to appear, uh, unin- uninvited, and more often than not undesired. You might shout, "Avat thee," till you were hoarse. You might call them foul spirits, or any other uncomplimentary terms you could think of. but until their job was done, not 1 inch would they budge. The modern spirit vanishes if you give him half a chance. But then he only something only came in the first place to oblige you out of politeness and weak-mindedness. Jesus. Margaret L. Furrand, New York Evening Post. Dang, she's like a horror, like, ghost enthusiast. This is like a basically saying that, like, the ghosts of this time, they're too weak. They're not scary enough. Everybody's gotten soft. The ghost stories have gotten soft. That's basically what she's saying. That's funny, honestly. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Okay, stage ghosts. A lot of these are kind of like becoming like the same ones, like kind of repeating. Oh wait, what's this one? This might be a good one. A good, like, kind of long, like... Okay. The Elmsbury Ghost. It appeared in person to Mr. Ebenezer Pollock. Clarissa Mackey. Hold on. Oh, Clara Deacon. Okay, for a second I thought this was written by the same person. But no, this is Clara. And the other one's Clarissa. Okay. So let's read this one. It's from 1910. But apparently, according to this, the copyright is 1909. I thought it said 1906 for a second. All right. Let's see what this one is. The Elmsbury Ghost. Let's see if this one is actually a ghost or if it turns out to not be. All right. Going once, going twice, going 3 times, and sold to Mr. Ebenezer Pollock for $1,900. Wow, $1,900 in 1910. That's crazy money. The auctioneer's hammer fell with a resounding thud and nearly grazed the nose of the purchaser. Didn't mean to damage a good customer, chuckled the man of the hammer as he pulled down the red flag above the gate and climbed into his buggy. Come down to Lawyer Finch's office, Bimby, Nezer, and we'll close the deal right and proper. Very well, said Ebenezer gruffly. He watched the crowd of women tiptoeing out of the house and waiting until the last one had passed through the gate, each with a furtive glance at the new owner. He was aware that they marveled because he had bought a ghost-ridden house. When he was alone in the shadows of the tall oaks, he looked up at the house, dark and foreboding in the midst of rank grass and weeds. Whatever had been its original color, it was now faded to a dingy mustard hue, blotted with dark green and of heavy wooden shutters tightly closed. There were years and years when the shutters had never been closed. Those were the days before old Simon Elmsbury's granddaughter had run away with the school teacher and had in consequence been disinherited by the old man. Simon had left the house and land and furniture to the Foreign Missionary Society, and now, 5 years after his death, they had put it up at auction, and Ebenezer had bought it at much below its real value. It was well known that Simon would have opposed his granddaughter's marriage to any man. He was selfish enough to wish to keep her at his side, to wait upon him, for she was the only relative he had. Let us come and live with you, grandfather, Cornelia had pleaded with her arms around his neck. You will like Henry better when you know him. But the obdurate old man had angrily flung her aside, and the next day the girl had been married to Henry Stone and disappeared from Melville. After that, Simon Elmsbury closed the main part of the house and lived in the east wing for 10 years, and then he died without one relenting word to Cornelia. The Stones had never been heard from since their departure from Melville. No one knew where they lived or even if they were alive. Old Simon Elmsbury went to the grave unattended by any relative. Since Simon's death, gossip had it that the house was haunted. On stormy nights, the credulous said the old piano tinkled softly behind the closed shutters, and a woman's thin, sweet voice was heard singing in low tones. Snatches of this weird music could be heard sometimes in the lull of shrieking wind or dashing rain. On other nights, all was still. Some claimed that Cornelia was dead and that her sweet spirit came back to sing in the rooms of the old home, where she had spent a happy girlhood. In spite of ghostly rumors, Ebenezer Pollock had suddenly made up his mind to give up boarding in the village hotel and occupy a home of his own. The Elmsbury place suited him. It was near his harness shop, and the east wing was just large enough to serve his simple purposes. As for the main portion of the house, he gave it over to rats and mice and mold. He now walked up the path and entered the front door, creaking rustily on its hinges in the south breeze that swept the yard. On the second floor, the door banged loudly. Ebenezer started and then, with exclamations of disgust, entered the house. A long, dark hall stretched away into inky blackness, and to the right and left, open doors gave glimpses into darkened rooms faintly illuminated with candles placed there by the auctioneer. Ebenezer creaked in and out of the rooms filled with decaying furniture, carefully blowing out the candles. Upstairs, the candles were flickering strangely, and there was a chill in the large north bedroom as if from an open window. But all the windows were tightly shuttered and barred. Once outside again, he turned the great brass key in the front door with an involuntary sigh of relief. The east wing had a separate entrance and was shut off from the rest of the house by a sealed door. A day's work by Black and would make the wing very habitable for him and his bachelor belongings. Ebenezer didn't want a housekeeper. He detested women. Oh god, he's an incel. He had lived in the Elmsbury place for 3 weeks before he heard the singing ghost. It was the 21st of the 21st night of September. He remembered. And the equinoctial gale was shaking the old house to its very foundations. Ebenezer had gone to bed, but he could not sleep. The wind screamed down the wide chimney and whistled around the windows. The roar of beating rain drowned all sound save the whistling wind. There were creaking sounds beyond the walls, and Ebenezer fell to thinking of the ghost. It was then that the wind paused for breath, and the rain fell more lightly. From a distance came the echoing jangle of an old piano touched by timid fingers and a mere thread of melody in a woman's voice. Then the rain continued its monotonous beat, and he heard the music no more. Ebenezer Pollock was angry. He resolved to lay the intruding ghost if possible. And so the next day, when a watery sun rendered the house a little less dreary, he lighted a lantern and unsealed the door that led into the other side of the house. The house was quiet and dusty, and forlorn as on the day he had bought it. Strangely enough, Ebenezer did not look at the little piano which stood open just as Cornelia Elmsbury had left it so many years ago, with a yellowed sheet of music upon the rack. He scurried through the rooms with a half-realization that some slender spirit was flitting through the rooms away from his contaminating presence. A few weeks afterward, there came another storm of wind and rain, and again he heard the ghostly music. Ebenezer had a twinge of the rheumatism that night, and he very irritably rapped on the wall with his cane. The music stopped abruptly, and he did not hear it again, although there were many storms that fall. One winter evening, when the old house was wrapped in a blinding snowstorm, Ebenezer awoke from his first sleep with every muscle aching and drawing with pain. Rheumatism held him a captive. For hours he groaned dismally, conscious that the tire in his airtight stove was nearly out, or fire, sorry, that the fire in his airtight stove was nearly out at a time when he needed heat. There was no ministering hand to apply hot flannels to his swollen joints and muscles, or to allay his torture with soothing liniments. It was then that the ghost came again, this time with groping fingers upon the sealed door. It knocked gently and spoke to him in faint, frightened whispers. "Go away," shouted Ebenezer wrathfully. "Go away, ma'am. It ain't proper that you should be loitering around here. Go away, I say." There was a silence, and presently Ebenezer's thick, grizzled hair stood almost upright on his head. Ghostly footsteps sounded in the rooms over his head, and softly, tap, 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 down the narrow staircase that opened into his bedroom. The lamp beside his bed gave forth a cheering light, and Ebenezer Pollock, thoroughly frightened for the first time in his life, watched with fascinated eyes the slowly opening door at the foot of his couch. Tall and slender and pale, she stood before him at last, her tender blue eyes filled with pitying tears. Perhaps she was 40 years old, but the hair framing her delicate face made her appear much younger. "I could not bear to hear you moaning with pain all alone. My husband used to have rheumatism before he died, and I know just what to do," she said in a low tone. "Ma'am," gasped Ebenezer, "ma'am." He watched her slender figure as it fitted to and fro about his rooms. She mended the fire, and soon its cheering warmth brought relief to his aching limbs. She heated water and flannel cloths, and applied soothing liniments with very human fingers. When the lines of suffering had relaxed and Ebenezer's face still sought hers questioningly, she sat down in a low chair and spoke somewhat sadly. "I'm Miss Stone. Cornelia Elmsbury that was. I've been living here 4 years." "Here? In this house? How?" demanded Ebenezer doubtfully. "In the big back attic," said Cornelia with a little smile. "It looks out on the tall chestnut woods, you know, and the short chimney comes out there. Grandfather left a cellar full of coal and wood. I've got it real comfortable up there, and on stormy nights I'd come down in the dark and play on my piano till you drove me away. I used to walk over to Belton on dark evenings and get all my groceries and things. It was hard work, but it was heaven to me to get home again after all I went through," she broke into sobs. "What made you hide? What did you do it for?" asked Ebenezer excitedly. "My husband was poor. He died and left a little insurance money, just enough to buy my food and not enough to pay rent. My eyesight is so poor I cannot work, and so I thought I would come back here. I heard the place was shut up, and it was my own by rights. I knew I'd be driven out if anyone knew I was here." "You poor little thing," blurted Ebenezer pityingly. "Stay here just as long as you like." There was a long silence after that, while the little widow cried happily before the fire. Ebenezer was thinking rapidly. "If you ever go away, ma'am," he said, with a great blush, "I'll go after you and bring you back here," and he paused. It happened that one day the ghost deserted the Elmsbury house, and Ebenezer kept his word and went after her, and brought her back a bride to her old home. Interesting. Okay, I think this one I think was my favorite. That was a I actually liked that story. It was well written, it was pretty easy to like follow. And again, it turns out I'm assuming that it's actually like, Like, it's not an actual ghost. Again, with this pattern that we see, where it's like most of the time at the end of these ghost stories, it's not an actual ghost. It was actually her, like, living up in the attic, which again is still creepy in its own right. Yeah, no, this was a good one. I really liked this one. This is a 9 out of 10. In terms of creepiness, like before it's revealed that it's like actually her, it's actually like a good, like how it's written and everything. It's a good creepy like setting. How they describe the house and everything, really well done. I'd give that, yeah, I'd give that like a. In terms of creepiness, I'd give it like a 6. 6 or 7. Definitely, I think probably the creepiest ones. Up until obviously the reveal that it's not actually a ghost. But yeah. That was a good one. All right. Let's see. Let's find another one. A lot of things with the ghost photography. A lot of these are becoming refeats. Let's see. Let's look at this one. This looks like another fictional story. The Second Keyhole. Haunted house of Bodolf loses its ghost. Jotham Kingsley. All right, so this one's from 1913, so it's a few years later than the other one. Let's go ahead and read this one and see how this one is. I feel like it's going to be hard to beat that last one. That was a good one. Just in terms of like it was like the actual like story aspect of things. Okay. The old Blithen place is rented, gasped Mrs. Shirley as her husband entered the house. Yes, I rented it to the new tenant myself, said Shirley calmly, as he threw himself into a comfortable chair and opened a newspaper. But Dick, I do not think you are the most provoking man on earth, cried Anne Shirley, almost in tears. What is the matter, my dear? Asked Dick. Well, I won't tease you, I suppose. I suppose you want to know who the new tenant is and all about the transaction. Of course I do. As if the old Blithen house wasn't the greatest mystery in Bodolf, and really the only interesting thing in this forsaken little village on the border. Dang, she hates where she lives. Mrs. Shirley spoke with some exasperation, perhaps justifiable, in a city-bred girl who had come as a bride to Bodolf, a village on the border between the United States and Canada, where her husband was not only the sole legal advisor of the inhabitants, but real estate dealer and banker as well. Bodolf was a sleepy town indeed, and its chief interest had centered around the once handsome resident, known far and near as the Blithen Place, and said to be haunted by the ghost of a Chinese cook once employed by old James Blithen. In consequence of this rumor, which gained credence with every new tenant, the house remained vacant most of the time. It stood in a remote part of Bodolf, and the villagers claimed that the boundary line between the two countries ran directly through the house. As the haunted house and its changing tenants afforded the chief source of excitement, Anne Shirley found a strange fascination in the old place and was deeply interested in its welfare. Dick Shirley knew this, and he delighted to tease pretty Anne about it. Well, it reads like a story, sweetheart, he said, drawing her down to his knee. This afternoon, a well dressed stranger entered my office and intim- uh, intimated that he was an artist in quest of a suitable house, and he wanted to paint pictures of Bodolph's scenery. Oh man, we have like a whole chunk of it missed. Oh god. Oh man. Ah, dang it. I don't know if we're gonna. I gave him a brief description, and as the size of the home and its something indated situation appealed to him, he took the keys and has gone to examine it. He is to call this evening and tell me his decision. He said that price is no object. There. Dick kissed his wife and released her just as the doorbell rang. Mary, uh, the something maid, deft, presently ushered into their presence a tall, gaunt framed man with gray hair, keen blue eyes, and strongly marked features. Mr. Gaines, announced Mary. Shirley went to greet the artist and presented him to Anne. Then the three sat down around the open fire of the something logs, or pine logs, for autumn evenings were chilly. I looked at the uh, Blithen place, Mr. Shirley, and I will take it, said Mr. Gaines after some uh, des- desultory conversation. It is it is in bad shape for present occupation, uh, said Dick frankly. Uh, I know, I know it, but I shall merely camp out something, a few friends. I suppose blah blah blah, some furniture in the you a man to uh, your needs, of course. Something. The place is rather isolated, and I something doubtfully. It is something situate. Uh, no, for my purposes, said Mr. Gaines, rising to take leave. I shall have the pleasure of seeing you again, Mrs. Shirley. He shook hands with Anne and turned inward and turned toward the door. When Dick, in response to a frantic signal from his wife, uh, detained him. Wait a moment, Gaines, he said, uh, laughingly. Uh, Miss Shirley insists that I discourage your intention of taking the Blithen place by telling you that it is haunted. Haunted, repeated the artist, wheeling about and facing them. Haunted, do you say? Please tell me about it. There isn't much to tell except that it has been almost impossible to keep a tenant in the place for the last 6 years. One and all declare it to be haunted. Sounds absurd, eh? Interesting, rather, sharply amended Gaines. Who is the ghost? It is said to be the uneasy spirit of a dead Chinese cook who once worked for old James Blithen. Tenants claim that they have been aroused at night by noises in the cellar and kitchen of the house. And when they have uh, investigated, each and every one reported seeing the thin, emaciated form of the dead cook and hearing his shrill screeches as he ran to and fro in search of some buried money, which rumor declares old Blithen stole from him. That's all, finished Dick with a laugh. I hope you are not frightened away from your bargain. Not in the least, said Gaines quickly. Thank you for the information. It will interest my friends as well as it has myself. Anne Shirley broke in eagerly. Dick forgot to tell you about the queer Chinese ornament that one tenant found the morning after he had seen the ghost, and how each one described the strange ornamental fragrance that permeated the place afterward. And once they discovered the prints of Chinese shoes in the soft mud outside the door. Thank you, Miss Shirley, said Gaines, flashing on her his rare smile. Now I will occupy the house with some degree of satisfaction. Blithen House certainly possesses interest for me. And you are not alarmed at thought of the ghost? Asked Anne. Not in the least. I am looking forward to my stay there with great interest. After Mr. Gaines had departed, Dick Shirley faced his wife. I wonder if I should have told him that one of the tenants was found murdered in the cellar, and that in this and in his clenched hand was a form of was found a tuft of Chinese hair. I think that might have been important to say. I think you legally have to say that like someone died in the house or was murdered in the house. Maybe not in 1913, but geez, that might have been an important thing to say. Um, you better tell him in the morning, dear. Then he will be taking the place with open eyes. 2 weeks later, Anthony Gaines quietly took possession of the Blithen house. A few days afterwards, 5 young men, laden with artists' paraphernalia, arrived and with little commotion took up the residence with the new tenant. Every morning, the 6 painters would set forth with painting kits and might have been observed painting industriously in some of the beautiful spots around Bodolf. They retired early, and from the reports of the French Canadian who came up from Bodolf each day to cook for them, they were a quiet, well behaved company who rose early, retired early, and drank not at all. If Pierre, the cook, had remained after nightfall, he might have had strange stories to relate of the new tenant and his guests. The house had been newly curtained from top to bottom, and on one night in particular, Anthony Gaines drew every window shade closely and, extinguished all lamps, drew forth an electric torch. The strong ray of white light pierced the gloom of the dining room and searched out the faces of his 5 guests. These were not the faces of dreamers. They were keen, resolute, courageous faces, and they one and all eyed their leader, Gaines, as he spoke. Ready, boys? He asked quietly. Ready, as was their unanimous response. Come on, then, he ordered, and they fell into line and followed him single file out the room, through the long hall and down a flight of steep stairs that led to the cellars of the old house. They were shoed in rubber-soled shoes, and their feet made no sound. The single ray of white light cut the dense blackness ahead. When they reached the cellars, Gaines turned to his companions. They cannot be long in coming now, he said in a low tone. We must find the second keyhole and so surprise them. Your information is straight then? Asked the man named Lawlor. Straight as a string, was the reply. Anderson wired me in cipher that an attempt might be made to smuggle half a dozen Chinese art. I can't read that. Something or some half a dozen Chinese across the border tonight. Oh, they're not artists. Oh, wow, they're not artists. uh it stumped me how they god dang it, I wish this was better scanned of some sort. The second keyhole will reveal that mystery. Let up it at had you but got Jim something had been smuggling something across the border for in the old something. Uh, right, you are, Lawler. Now something. Uh, come on. Gaines turned his light sharply to the left, and the five followed him directly as before. Uh, Presently, after passing through several small cellars, they emerged into a large wine cellar. There was an odor of spirits here, and great cobwebs um, hung from the low ceiling. The wine racks were empty of bottles, but along the north wall there stood a row of something hogsheads, resting on their sides uh, and cradles set on the ground. Old Blithen must have been fond of drink, chuckled one of the detectives, for such they really were. Or a clever old schemer, added Gaines dryly. He stepped to a door in one corner of the stone wall and fitted a great key into the keyhole. The five watched him with tense interest. The key grated and the door swung toward them, revealing nothing save another section of stone wall. Stung, muttered Titus. Not at all. You remember that Anderson reported hearing some conversation about a second keyhole? Well, this bluff is the first keyhole. Most anyone finding it a blind door would give up the search, but we must find that second keyhole. The youngest detective of all, the Ike Thayer, had been examining the hogsheads. Now he called sharply to his leader. I've got it. By Jove, they're a clever set of rascals, he chuckled. When his companions were gathered about the central hogshead, Thayer took the light from Gaines' hand and held it close to the spigot in the head of the giant cask. With a twist of his hand, he removed the spigot and revealed a small round opening in which was set a brass lock with a small keyhole. The second keyhole, muttered Gaines. Good for you, Thayer. Now to lay low and catch the fellow who comes to open the door by way of the second keyhole. Concealing themselves about the central cask, the six waited for several hours. Sometimes they talked about the clever scheme of old James Blithen, who had made a passageway through his garden to the Canada side and where entrance could be made into the cellar through one of the great wine casks. They spoke of the ghost of the cook who had never existed, but whose part was evidently played by a Chinese smuggler. In this way, even after Blithen's death, tenants could be kept from the old house and freedom given to maintain the nefarious business. Someone in Bodolf was carrying on the business. Who was it? The name of Dick Shirley was mentioned, and then there came a sudden silence as a sound echoed on the stairs. Gaines had extinguished his light, and they were in darkness. The intruder stepped softly and came directly into the cellar, pausing near the wine cask. He flashed out a tiny electric torch, bent to the keyhole, twisted the spigot out, inserted a key, and swung open the end of the cask. He waited in the darkness again, and Lawyer whispered to Thayer that he had seen the man's face, and it was Dick Shirley. This was the man who, outwardly leading an honorable life, was carrying on James Blithen's dishonest business. And Anne Shirley? It was her share to keep alive the ghost stories about the old mansions and frighten prospective tenants away. Wow, that's a good twist. I like that. Now there came a sound from the wine cask, hollow murmurings and echoing footsteps. Then a number of people entered the cellar, and that the same moment Gaines flashed his torch, his armed men sprang forward. There were shrill cries of terror from the smuggled Chinamen, an oath from Dick Shirley, who instantly vanished from sight, and a bitter fight from the four Chinese smugglers who were in charge of the band. In 15 minutes, it was all over. The Chinese smugglers and smuggled were securely bound by their captors, and the door of the second keyhole was officially sealed by Gaines before closing the house and taking the captives away. Dick Shirley and his wife disappeared that night, and Bodolf never saw them again. But it is probable that they took their ill gotten wealth to a far country, some say New Zealand, where they are as unhappy as most wrongdoers and expertise are. Wow. Okay. Minus the anti-Chinese sentiment that is clearly in this story, representative of the time, it being from 1913. That was a good twist. I liked that. And again, it's another example of it not being an actual ghost. That's just how these stories are, I guess. That's just really interesting. Again, we see another example of a story that, like, it's not a ghost. And I guess that makes sense. The second keyhole. Now the title makes sense. That was a good twist. I liked that. I'd give that like an 8. Again, it loses some points for like the clear anti like Chinese rhetoric that's in this. That was popular at the time. But as a story, with that twist at the end, it's pretty good. And again, okay, it was kind of scary when they were describing the other one, or the house, when they were kind of describing the house, but not nearly as good as the other one. So, hold on. Okay. Yeah, that was good. Okay. I think, let's see, what time is it? Okay, yeah, I think that's where I'm going to call it today. This was good. Out of all of these stories that we read, I think my favorite was this one, the Elmsbury Ghost. I think this was my favorite one. I just thought the writing was really good. The description of the house was like genuinely like good and like creepy. Um, I like the the little twist that like she's not actually dead. It's actually just a person living there. Really well done. I think this was my favorite. Um, feel free to put like if you guys had a favorite in the chat. But yeah, this one was like good. The one with like this one describing the laughing ghost, which again, this one was supposedly a real story. That one was actually like creepy. But it was so short and just like a little tiny thing. But yeah, overall, this was really good. But I think that's where we're going to call this one for today. But don't worry, we are going to be doing this is just the beginning of Spooky Month. We're going to be doing a few more of these for the rest of the month, reading newspapers from other states. Because, like I said, this is all just from Vermont. There's plenty of other, as you can see, a lot of places that we can choose from. For some reason, there's a ton in Kansas. I don't know what's going on in Kansas that they have so many ghost stories. Like this area, like yeah, this central area. Look at this. Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri is like a hub. California, I mean, makes sense because it's a very populated state. And New York and Pennsylvania makes sense because they are also very populated and it is kind of more of like Eastern. But that's interesting that like there's this many in like the central, like Midwest. Interesting. But all right, let's go ahead then and let's head on. Um, let's head on back to our office, our spookified Halloween office. Yeah, this was fun. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today's stream, folks. If you're new here, I'm not a professor, but you can call me Nap. I stream officially every Sunday and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, doing things like reading historical documents, old newspapers, doing history research and stuff like that. So if you want to know when I go live next, make sure you go ahead and follow. Also, I sometimes do guerrilla streams outside of those two stream times. Um, I might do one this weekend, maybe on Saturday. It just depends on how much, because I do have some work that I need to do this, some like chores and stuff I need to do this week. It depends on how long that'll take. Um, but yeah. So I might stream, and if I do stream on Saturday, it's going to be a 2 Point Museum stream, which is a game that I've been playing a lot because I also work IRL. I actually work in a museum, so it's been my way to kind of like I joke that like I work in a museum and then I go and work on my fake museum when I'm not working in my real one. But yeah, so yeah, and then what else? Oh, I also do have linked down below my Twitter if you want to follow me there, so that way you can also get notifications of when I'm live or if there are any updates of like streams, and also if just other stuff that I'm doing outside of work or outside of streaming. And I also have my YouTube channel linked down below where I've made some YouTube shorts on like some of the things that we found in some of our previous streams. And yeah, so I think that's everything. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can find somebody to raid. Let's see. Okay, I think I see somebody we can raid. So if you guys can stick around for the raid, that would be great, and give some support to we're gonna raid a guy by the name of Damien Verde. He's a channel who is actually he's a paleontologist and does like has like a whole like paleontology theme to his streams and VTuber model, and he's currently painting some miniatures. So let's go ahead and let's raid him and get this all set up here. Sweet. All right. Let's get the raid going. And then let me go ahead and make a raid message here. All right, so that'll be the one for subscribers. And then we'll make one real quick for followers. All right, so there we go. So we'll go ahead and use those as we raid into him. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's stream. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your night or evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you definitely Sunday, where we'll be looking for more ghost stories in these newspaper articles. And yeah, we'll be looking at a new state, and we'll see what new stuff we can find. But yeah, have a good rest of your evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good evening. Take care.